right, just like that, we're live. And like I told you when I did your podcast, you have like this high-speed professional sounding intro. And when I record my episodes, we just go into it. So we're already going. Listeners are going to be hearing all of this. But just a quick introduction. I think this is a cool story, how random things happen, people unite, and then before you know it, friendships are forged.
Yeah.
I was at the pet store buying fish. And for anybody that's wondering, all the fish are dead now.
Oh.
Like, we cannot get the fish tank to work. I thought the fish tank would be a good, like, kind of just a little life lesson for the girls to have something to take care of and feed and whatnot.
Yeah.
It actually became a life lesson on death because every single one of them is dead now. But anyways, we ran into each other at the pet store and we have some mutual friends and whatnot. And you're like, hey, Greg, did you recognize me from the initial video?
So yeah, I recognized your face. And I was
Okay.
like, I know that guy. And then I looked at your shirt and it said coffee or die. And I was like, okay, so I know him. I'm tying it. I was like, that's Greg Anderson.
Okay.
I was like, babe, I know we're here for our brand new puppy and all this stuff. I have to go introduce myself. And I walked up and I was like, hey, here we are. Greg, let me introduce you. I'm friends. Love what you stand for. You're a warrior.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
it was cool. And like I always tell people, anybody that listens to this show knows, like, I'm an energy guy.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like when you meet somebody, you know within seconds if that person kind of vibes with you or not, right? And so I was immediately like, oh, I fucking like this guy. And it was funny because remember my wife was checking out and she had like a cart full of stuff.
Yes.
And then we left our credit card in the car. So like right at the time when we were talking, there was kind of like chaos ensuing.
Right.
And then you're like, bro, I do a podcast. Would you want to do it? Fuck yeah, that's what I do now. I like it, you know? And so we linked up. We did your podcast, The Soulful Hunter.
Yep.
And if people want to check that out, where would they find that at?
Anywhere podcasts are found, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, also on YouTube, but it's under the Washington Backcountry channel. So if you searched up the Soulful Hunter podcast, you're going to be able to find all the episodes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I went to your house and did that podcast and it was fun. But that when I'm the guest, the story's about me, right? And I was like, well, we vibed well. That was a fun episode. I should have Johnny on my podcast and hear your story because you got everybody has a cool story, right? And I also get a lot of feedback from listeners that it's cool when I've had a few like celebrities on or people that have a lot of notoriety, but a lot of people like the normal American that are on the 9-to-5 grind, that have done something in their life that's meaningful and it's something that's attainable to them. And people enjoy hearing inspirational stories from normal everyday people.
Right.
And bro, that's you. I love your story, right? And so if you're listening, Johnny has become a hunter and hunting has helped you grow as a person tremendously.
It's transformed my life. Everything.
And I think hunting is something that a lot of people are aspiring to get into, but it's a lot more, it's easier said than done. And
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you that firsthand, right? And so, I mean, you said you've been hunting for just a couple years or 3 years or so?
Yeah. So I only killed my first animal 4 years ago.
Okay, 4 years ago. And you're already on the cover of a hunting magazine. So, you know, it's framed in your house. And I was like, because someone that's been doing something 4 years, I always give like a Jujutsu analogy. That means you're a blue belt. Or maybe a brand new purple belt, right?
Okay.
But what that says to me is, okay, you got the skill set down. You understand how the game's played. You're proficient in what you need to do and what needs to be done. But at the same time, you're pretty fucking new and you have a long way to go. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely.
See? And so, yeah, I think your story's cool. And you're an educator here in Washington State.
Yeah. Been teaching 15 years, 16 years here in the state of Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, welcome to the show, Johnny Mack. I appreciate you coming out, man.
I appreciate it, Greg.
I like to just give my guests kind of give them the forum and just kind of give a background of who you are, where you're from, and we just have fun with it and take it from there.
Absolutely. Well, first off, I was on my run this morning before coming over here, and I was listening to your episode, The Mitch and Greg Show. And I listened to that while I was running, and I was like, you guys were talking about blue belts. It can take on 98% of most everyone that
Yeah.
I was like, okay, then I need to be a blue belt. That's what my goal is. Because when I went to my very first jujutsu class with you last week, and this we'll get into this here shortly, I was like, okay, this is giving me that motivation. I know my direction, which you have to identify what you want. So a little history about myself. I'm a school teacher. I followed in the footsteps of my father. He was a school teacher. He was a football coach, all these things. And for the longest time, I was not living my life. And in society nowadays, people are content with just going along. Get along to go along.
Yeah.
Just like hell, whatever easiest, fast food nation, like whatever.
And I think a lot of people aren't even aware that they're missing out on being themselves.
Yes.
Just they're caught up in the grind, the 9 to 5 grind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. So I'm a cycle breaker. I taught myself how to hunt. I had this call upon my soul to be wild, to get out into the wilderness, and like the idea of a lone ranger on a cowboy on a horse on a hill out in the prairie lands, and him letting his hat come down to his face, and just being content, solitude, grit, courage, everything, self-reliance. These were all the things that I didn't feel like I had. My father taught me a lot of things, but he also didn't teach me a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And he withheld a lot of things from me. And that's a whole nother like podcast. We can get into the father issues on a different episode. But the point is I was never living my own life. I came from a house of judgment, guilt, shame. And so to be who I was, my father, he pounded into my head, you only get one first impression. You only get one first impression. And so instead of thinking about who I am and how I present myself and how I show up in the world, it was always, what are they thinking about me?
Yeah.
What are they gonna view me and judge me, and how am I showing up for them rather than how am I showing up for myself? And hunting was the transformative moment in my life where I chose myself. And I think this is very critical for today's world, because I was talking to my wife about this last night. I was like, I voted for myself for the very first time. Could you imagine any politician in this world going to, let's say, the president of the United States and then voting for somebody else?
Yeah.
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 No,
like
that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
It should have happened last cycle.
And so for the very first time, I was like, no, I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing the life I want.
Mm-hmm.
And my big thing that I always talk about on the Soulful Hunter podcast is you have to identify what you want. You need to know your why.
Mm-hmm.
And your what is so important. And we talked about this on our episodes, like, shooting at a target. If you don't have your target, you don't know what you're aiming at, you're never going to hit anything. You're shooting without a cause. So,
well, and that's I'm sure you've heard the saying aim small, miss small, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
And the more finely tuned in you are on what you're trying to hit, the tighter your shot group's going to be, right?
Absolutely.
And that applies to exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So I voted for myself by saying, no, my heart is calling me to go this direction. I want to go this way.
So what do you think it was about hunting specifically? I mean, was it a childhood thing? Was it someone you look up to, like a Cam Haines or something, or just what made you go that direction?
Yeah, it's a great question. I had a couple uncles that hunted, but no one ever asked me to go hunting. My dad did instill in me backpacking and this love for the wild. Like I went on my first, 18-mile backpack journey when I was in second grade.
Nice.
Just a little, JanSport backpack and took off. And I was like, this is incredible. I was scared to death. Bears, we encountered some bears on the hike and all this. And I was a scared little boy. And that also attributes to the household that I grew up in, is I was submitted into not fighting for myself, not fighting for my survival, for my needs, my desires, my wants. And so it took like this revolutionary change in my life to be like, no, I'm not going to follow in the footsteps of my father and do what everyone else thinks I should. I always like to use the term, we never should on people.
Yeah.
You don't tell people what they should be doing.
Yeah.
People get to make their own choices, or at least that's the concept, right? And
you would think.
You would think that's the whole idea. And so I was like, no, I want to learn how to hunt. I don't know anyone. No one's ever asked me to hunt. No one's ever asked me to go experience this. I always had a love for guns. Red Ryder BB gun, smallest age. A Christmas Story. Are you gonna shoot your eye out? I used to line up GI Joes, little green army men, in the backyard, and just like lay down there, pretend I was a soldier, pretend I was a cowboy, hunting, all this stuff.
Bro, I love that you said green army men, because I don't think this generation knows what army men are.
No,
Like every little boy, because how old are you again?
37.
37. Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm 40. Every single little boy from our generation, that was your toy.
That was it.
You had a sand pit in the backyard and a bunch of army men, and they went to war with each other.
Absolutely. My wife, she's like, man, our kids are being so bored at our house right now, and that's a
third podcast.
That's a third podcast, because being bored is a concept.
Yeah.
And she's like, we need to just get a pile of dirt. She's like, it's like $300 to bring in 10 yards of dirt and just dump it in the driveway. They would be in heaven. And I'm like, yes. So we're thinking about doing that.
I love it, dude.
Getting back to the gun thing is like, I always had this call, like it didn't matter if I got home from school and it was raining outside. Give me my BB gun. I don't have a rain jacket, but I put on my sweatshirt and pretending like I'm out in the wilderness. Like it's survival mode.
Uh-huh.
Here we go. And yet through life's progressions of distractions, sports, girls, relationships, like the shoulds of the world.
Yeah. And then when you get a little older, your bills and your mortgage. And
yes.
Yeah.
And so, what I wanted got backburnered. We'll put on the back burner. We'll address that at some point. And then finally, I realized it's like, dude, life is now. Yeah. I don't have tomorrow to go chase my dreams. Mm-hmm. If I want it, it's time to get it now. And I wanted to learn how to hunt because one of the main reasons is I wanted to know how to provide for myself. My dad, he always would talk about like framing homes and doing all this and all these like great grand things. I'm like, dude, you never taught me anything. Uh-huh. I don't know how to frame a house. Our good friend Chad Youngquist.
Yeah. Shout out Chad Youngquist.
Yeah, Chad, if you're listening, brother, I love you, man.
If you hit that little dial right there, the whole thing will slide up and then it'll raise the mic up too.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And then you can pull the whole bass closer to you.
Excellent.
Boom.
Thank you. All right. So I was talking to Chad recently and he was like, well, do you got any skill set? I was like, no. I could be a manager. I'm a leader. I know,
You're good with people.
I direct people very well.
And that's an underappreciated quality. Because right. I always say I look at my friends, because I have a bunch of buddies that are good at hunting, good at electrical work, good at metal fabrication. And I'm right. like, man, when the apocalypse comes, I can shoot a gun. But then people say the same thing to me. It's like, no, you're a good person to have in the community to like bring people together and inspire and that kind of stuff. And so that's needed too, Yeah. Takes all kinds.
Dude,
but I can't garden, so I mean.
Okay, well, I can get you on that. We can cover each other. I got your 6. So this journey of like, I'm doing something I want to know how to do for my own survival. And I'm sick and tired of not knowing how. Instant gratification of this world, whether it's fast food, drive-thrus, or asking Alexa, hey, what's the weather going to be? Or Alexa, what's this? And, everyone Googles everything. No one holds their own knowledge anymore. Yeah. And that was my thing, is like, I want to know. I want to know the world. I want to experience it. And we talked about experiences always trump opinions. Mm-hmm. Perspectives always trump opinions because you know it.
Yeah.
How do I know that happened? Because I lived it.
That's right, dude.
And so here I was, is like, I didn't even know how I got my food. Safeway, go to the meat department, whatever. I love meat. It's phenomenal. I know that like my body craves it. And yet if it came down to, and someone was like, you're going to die today if you can't kill an animal. Mm-hmm. Man, I guess I'm going to the grave early because, that's not a skill set that I hold.
And something else that I think about, something that's inspired me to get into hunting is, and again, I've been hunting a fair amount of times, and I've yet to kill an animal. So I've learned that shooting and hunting are two very different things. Because I thought I'm a good shot. I can go hunting. Well, no, that's a small part of it, But one thing that I wanted to do the reason I've kind of started to pursue this, same thing. Like, I want to know where my food comes from. I want to have that connection and I want to experience that. And I'm not saying that every piece of meat has to come from the woods, but at the same time, I think I need to appreciate that this isn't just a package from Safeway. This is a being that gave its life for your own nourishment.
Yeah.
And I want to feel that connection because I think that's important. If you're not willing to go through the process of harvesting an animal, but you're willing to eat meat, I think there's a big disconnect that you need to feel as a person. And I think we talked about it on your show because I haven't killed a deer or an elk yet, and I've went out a few times. But I know in my heart when that moment comes that I'm not going to enjoy it. You know what I'm saying?
I heard you say that.
It's the truth, man.
Yeah.
Like I really like animals. I mean, you walked in the house and got bombarded by my pack of dogs, and it's like, but I also understand the cycle of life, and I also understand that this, like, life eats life. And I don't care if you're a vegan or you're a vegetarian or you're a hunter, life eats life.
Yep.
And that is how we sustain ourselves. And if you can't be honest with yourself about that, then like you said, it's an early trip to the grave, right?
Absolutely.
And dude, plants are a life form too. And so, and even more bizarre is they're now finding out that, like, plants can communicate.
Well, have you ever heard the study about if you actually talk positively to your plants, they produce more fruit?
I've heard about that, like, through word of mouth. I've never looked at any, like, double-blind placebo-controlled studies. But I was watching a documentary the other day called Fantastic Fungi. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
And they were talking
Phenomenal.
about how plants, how trees can recognize their own offspring.
Yep.
And then they can transmit nutrients to their offspring through the mycelium network in the ground. And mother trees, if they understand that, like, their offspring are being malnourished, they can feed them.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a deeper level of connection.
It's like Avatar.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It is literally like Avatar. So, I mean, you can say, oh, you eat animals, but I only eat plants. And it's like, it's kind of like over here, over there, right? Life eats life.
The circle of life, right? It takes death to produce life. In whether it's religion, food, dying your ego to yourself so that you can step up and be the person that you're meant to be. It takes death to bring life. Gardens need fertilizer. What is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's dead stuff.
Yeah.
That you're putting on to this to grow it, to nurture it. And it's amazing how people are so disconnected. It's not a judgment. It's just a reality.
Yeah.
I
think most people, if you would give them the opportunity, would probably like to be more connected.
Yeah.
And if you were to provide, like, hey, do you want to see where your food comes from? Do you want to have a small garden on your back porch? Like, if you were able to give people the opportunity, I think most people would be interested in it. But just like we said when we started the show, everybody's caught up in the 9-to-5 grind.
So busy.
And you're losing that connection with the world.
Yeah. The interesting thing is when people say, oh, I'm too busy for that, or, I don't have time. Well, you only do what you want to do.
That's right. Yeah.
100% of the time. So then you obviously just don't want it bad enough. And that's okay.
Actually,
acknowledging that is okay.
Yeah, exactly. Say that to me. Because I have some friends, and this is like one of my pet peeves when they're like, dude, I can't wait to start training jiu-jitsu with you. I'm going to start training jiu-jitsu with you. And I've heard that so many times that now I'll tell people, like, don't tell me that you're going to train jiu-jitsu with me. Just show up.
Right.
Right? You just showed up.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want people, because when you start to engage people like, oh, you want to train? Well, when are you going to train? Well, I'm really busy with this and I'm really busy with that. And, like, a perfect example is like a good friend of mine. I love him, but he's single, no kids.
Oh, no.
And he's telling me, he's like, bro, I'm so slammed. I'm so busy. And it's like, you also have 3 young kids.
Yes.
Don't tell me about being busy until you're running a family, a herd of humans around.
Yes.
Like, your time just vanishes.
Yeah.
And so, but I have lots of people that train that have big families. So it comes down to, what do you prioritize?
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about, is this concept of what do you want? So I know I want to be a self-provider. I want to be able to provide for my family. And when stuff goes down, and even not when stuff goes down, I just want to be able to provide, period. I want to have knowledge. I want to gain as much. I want to be a sponge to the world and take it all in. I don't want someone else telling me what I should do, have, eat, whatever. Look at Bill Gates. And this is going into the whole like freedom aspect of it all. He is buying up so much ranch land in America, and he's one of the biggest investors into Beyond Meat, which is the lab grown meat.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, you're also pushing vaccines. He's pushing depopulation, which is stuff that's come out in the news before. And
guess what else he's pushing? His fucking waistline. He looks like a bag of shit. You know what I mean? And dude, it's the truth. I mean, on my podcast, I'm a lot harsher than your podcast. Like I tried to watch my F-bombs on your show.
I appreciate it.
But the reality is that dude looks like a fucking big bag of shit.
Yeah.
And he's telling us what type of nutrients to put into our bodies. And I mean, that's the whole world though, is you have these people that have worked their way into positions of power and like, congratulations, good on you. You built a fucking computer company and you're a billionaire now. And that's great, right?
Yeah.
But just because you did that doesn't make you a subject matter expert on every single fucking last aspect of being a human being. And that's what all these cocksucking politicians and rich, elite, big tech people think. It's like, okay, well, something worked out for me and now I'm in this position, so I'm going to tell you everything. And it's like, dude, let's go to the track and see who can run 100 meters faster. You know what I mean? Like there's aspects of being a human being that you are not an expert on. And that's okay, right? But I don't understand, like, in what world does a guy that built a computer company get to tell me what nutrients to put in my body and what medicine to put in my arm? It's just bizarre, right?
It's cuckoo. Being a school teacher, I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of different people over the years. And I had a special group of boys who I was mentoring. I coached them in sports, coached them in football and basketball. And then their parents addressed me because I used to be a young life leader for middle school. It's called Wildlife.
Okay. And
they came up to me and they're like, hey, would you lead our kids in Bible study? And I was like, oh, man, this is accountability. All of a sudden I got rubber meets the road of like, you say this, but do you lead this and live this? And I was like, okay, well, no better time for me to lead myself than to get down to it so that I can also lead others. And so that was when my faith and my journey of growing and taking accountability for actually what I say and having it line up with what I do met. And from that moment, I remember talking to these kids. I was like, well, why do you believe what you believe? Is it because your parents just tell you this? Or because you're told this in school and all this different perspective? And they stopped and they just thought about it. I was like, okay, it's time to be a critical thinker. The biggest gift that I can give to my children is to question everything and then understand what it is that they want to have as a foundation. If they don't think like me, act like me, be like me, that's fine. Be yourself. Identify why. You don't stand for anything, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
So stand for something. And so this concept of like identifying what you want, who you are, all comes from going inside yourself. You gotta go deep inside yourself. And you always talk about micro adversity and adversity. Well, those situations do two things: either cause you to shrivel and not even want to address anything, or they cause you to address things, and then that causes you to then go deep inside. Why am I acting this way? Why am I responding this way? Why am I so reactionary to everything rather than being tactical? My brother wrote a book. It's called Everyone Has a Plan Until They Get Punched in the Face. And the concept is
shout out Mike Tyson.
Yeah, right. And shout out Lucas Mack, you stud. So the point is that like everyone thinks they're tough until stuff goes down. And you always fall back on your training. You don't fall forward on your training.
That's what we always just say in like the world of law enforcement is you will fall back to your highest level of training. Yeah. You're not going to rise to the occasion. And like, I mean, I used to talk about it as a cop all the time because a lot of cops, they don't want to focus on their fitness. They don't want to focus on their cardiovascular endurance. They don't want to focus on their fighting capabilities. But a fight is coming because all cops get in fights.
Yep.
And it's like, what do you think is going to be the outcome if you're not willing to train yourself to be proficient? And it falls back to just what you're saying. A lot of people have unrealistic expectations. Oh, well, I'll just punch him in the face, or I'll just do this. And if he does that, then I'll just do this. And it's like they build these convoluted paths that are not based in reality. And it's, I think everybody does that to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
You know?
You know, when that bully stands up to you, you know, I don't know about your experiences, but like I get the shakes. My history of not standing with courage,
Mm-hmm.
it gives me the shakes, makes me want to quiver and cower down and lose words. But to be able to articulate, you know, my dad, he always said it only takes one punch to have your nose broken for the rest of your life. And I was like, okay, so words are powerful. And being able to process this is really powerful, but you also need to understand what you stand for and how to navigate life because of that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I showed up to your jiu-jitsu gym because I know I lack a skill set. You know, it's that head game, like, okay, just punch the dude, or, you know, how to counteract and move. And it's like, I don't know. If it really comes down to it, do I actually know how to quickly get into it? And when I got into your gym, you taught 4 moves that night, and I was like, this is awesome. And so I actually made a shout out to Jake Cicchini. You stubbed because I got to roll with him, and I crossed his guard and I made a move, and then I didn't know what to do.
You passed his guard.
Passed his guard. See, that's
Yeah.
there you go. That was his very first class. But
Yeah, one class. I
So
don't
I
expect
passed-
you to have the verbiage down.
so I passed his guard, and then I just kind of laid on him, and I was like, okay, I'm going to tap out right here, and I'm on top because I actually don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to physically, I'm not punching you in the face or anything.
Yeah.
I don't. And so I think that's life. That is the metaphor for life, is that you really don't know what you're going to do until you're in that situation. But if you don't have any training or knowledge or how to handle situations, what do you do then?
Yeah. And bro, I mean, I talked about it at lineup at the end of practice when everybody was standing there, because you brought your friend Thad, and then there was a couple other new people. And I always like to articulate that to people, is like, the tools that you gain on the mats are applicable to all other aspects of your life. They're applicable to your professional life. They're applicable to your marriage. They're applicable to your parenting skills. And it's exactly what you just said. You have to get comfortable confronting like these unknowns and confronting things that are stressful and confronting things that you think you have the answer to until you get there. Now, oh shit, I don't have the answer to. And all of those little situations that you're experiencing on the mats day in and day out,
Yeah.
it helps you become more resilient, and it helps you become a problem solver. It helps you become capable of looking at these situations where there's a lot of unknowns, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be good, because you face that day in and day out. And I loved that you and your friend, like, day one felt a little piece of that, you know, because that's what jujitsu is.
Yeah.
And I always say 10% of jujitsu has to do with fighting. And don't get me wrong when I say that, because I mean, don't misconstrue that as jujitsu is not going to help you in self-defense. It absolutely will. But 90% of it helps you grow outside of the combat arts, you know?
Yeah. I had to challenge my courage muscle. I had to flex my courage muscle just to walk into the gym. And you know, like, our head and our heart and our body, they're all different things. And so you have to be like, okay, it's time to get it under control. I was nervous because having no wrestling background, no grappling background, no fighting background, to all of a sudden be like, okay, you know, I have a torn right shoulder that I had surgically repaired. This one, I'm pretty sure I need to have repaired. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not using those as crutches. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I can't do it until I get it fixed, or like, no, life is now. It is time.
And your body's your body.
Right?
You know?
I was like, if this gym, if I'm meant to get hurt, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if you've listened to many of my episodes or not, but I had a gentleman on named Paul Gardner who was shot through the spine when he was 19 years old. And he's our age, he's 40. And he was a young Marine fighting in Iraq, and he's been paralyzed ever since. And he texted me not too long ago. He's like, hey, next time I'm in town, do you think it would be cool if you taught me some jiu-jitsu? He goes, half my body doesn't work, but half of it does. And if you could teach me how to do some stuff with the half that works, I think that'd be cool. And I'm like, fuck.
Wow.
Yes, dude. Right? Because your body's your body. There's a lot of unforeseen and uncontrollable circumstances in life. And I'm the first to say, like, if I was in his shoes, I don't know if I would be able to have that kind of motivation and that kind of grit. It's inspiring to see. I mean, I have a bad knee, and that bums me out sometimes. Like, oh, my knee. And then I see a dude like him, it's like, you need to shut up about your knee, you know?
Yep.
But what I'm saying is, like, you got to do what you can with what you have. And if you're worried about, oh, this or that, my shoulder, my knee, it's like, dude, you're as young as you're going to be right now.
Yeah, excuses.
Yeah.
Everyone's got them. Are you going to let your excuses dictate your life, or are you going to be in control of your life?
Mm-hmm.
And that is like, it's so simple to say. You know, we are sipping
all
coffee.
These cliches.
Yeah, just
like, oh, what's this podcast talking about? You know,
right? And it's like, no, I actually went in the woods to teach myself how to hunt. I actually got on the mat, regardless of anything.
And we're going to talk about all that stuff because we're only 30 minutes in. But I mean, I mean, and this is another important thing that I think people need to realize is, like, if you want to grow through hunting, or you want to grow through jujitsu, or you want to grow through hiking or summiting mountains, all that's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you did yesterday, sure, it helped you and it brought you to the point where you're at right now. But if you're done there, well, then you're done, right?
So that's the thing, right? Today's Tuesday. I was at your gym last Wednesday.
Yeah.
Last Wednesday evening, I was like, I'm a champ, man. I'm the man. Look what I just did. It was day one.
Yeah.
You know, I go home, I hop on YouTube. I'm like, okay, I actually don't know anything about this. So I started to watch it on YouTube and diving down the rabbit hole of that. And then, you know, the next day, Thursday, I'm sore. My chest is a little sore after going through some drills and learning how to, you know, put that shoulder into somebody's chest and having that physically explained to me, and me being the dummy in that scenario. And I'm like, oh man, my sternum is like, it's a little sore. And here I was, and all of a sudden another day passes, and another day passes, and another day passes. And here we are, Tuesday of the next week. And what I did on Wednesday last week doesn't mean anything at all.
Well, I mean, it's definitely building a foundation, right? And I tell people this too, because I've had people say, like, you know, I'd love to train, but I could only make it into the gym once every 2 weeks. And it doesn't really, I don't think I could ever get good doing that. And I'm very honest with people. You're not going to get super good training 2 times a month. You're not going to, right? But the other side of the coin is some jujitsu is better than no jujitsu, right? And that would go for anything that benefits you as a human being.
Learning how to garden is better than not knowing how to garden.
Or if you read out of a book 2 times a month or 0 times a month, what's better, right? And so anything that's building you as a person, some is better than none. And so if you want to train jiu-jitsu 2 times a month because of your schedule or your kids or your life or even your priorities. And I tell people, like, jiu-jitsu is a priority to me. I understand it might not be a priority to you, but if it's something that you can still implement in your life, you're going to gain benefit from it. Like, you trained 1 time and you felt better about a lot of different aspects of who you were. You know what I mean? So it's crazy.
It's hard to put words to it. Like, I'm smiling right now because I'm just like, I felt like I lived. And then I think this speaks to your military service and how you talked about how when you went overseas, you just kind of expected lights to go out at some point and then that be it. And so that overcame your fear of death. People are so afraid to die. And yet we don't even understand the concept of truly living.
I mean, that's why Braveheart became my favorite movie when I was a 14-year-old kid, right? I mean, I was in 9th grade when that came out. And it literally changed my life. Because, I mean, that's one of his things. Like, every man dies. Not every man truly lives. There's so many quotes in that movie when I was a 14-year-old skater that I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like, standing up for what you believe, putting everything on the line, resisting people that are, like, bullying you. I mean, that's what the English were doing to them. You know what I mean? Is like, you're going to live on our terms. You're going to do what I say. And one man says, you know what? No, we're not fucking going to. It gave me goosebumps as a kid. And it's like, yes.
Do you know Abraham Lincoln named one of his boys William Wallace?
Really?
William Wallace Lincoln.
Man, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I hope I have a son someday now.
So savage. And it just goes to show, like, he cared so much about freedom and what William Wallace stood for that he honored his children and that legacy by naming his kids. And look what Abraham Lincoln stood for.
Yeah.
He set people free.
Dude,
Like,
it's awesome, man.
identifying your root and core values as a human being. Like, what do you stand for? What do you stand for? What is the point of life if you don't actually know what your rudder is that gives you direction? Otherwise, you're just a log floating down the river, bumping into everything as you go.
And not only what do you stand for, but what are you willing to risk to defend that position or support that position, right? And I love what you said a couple minutes ago, because you're like, everybody's so afraid of dying. And dude, if the last 24 months of, I was going to say our society, but really the world, right, hasn't taught us that like fear is the mind killer. Fear will take your spirit and it'll fucking stamp it out like putting out a candle, right? People allow the fear of this pandemic to put them in such a position that they'll give up everything that they love about life, everything they love about people, everything they love about fitness, everything they love about like chasing their goals and their aspirations, just because you might die.
Right.
And it's like, it makes no sense to me. And that's why maybe it was a blessing that I came to terms as a 22-year-old Ranger that I'm going to get smoked overseas, because, and I don't say that to like beat my chest or sound tough. It's like, I came to an understanding that the experience of life is finite, and I'm probably going to die a lot younger than most other human beings. So how am I going to live between then and now?
Yes.
And I didn't live in fear. I loved deployments. It was one of the most exciting, fun times of my life. And even though I thought I was going to die, I wasn't afraid of it. And that's because it's just like you said, you have to look inside yourself and you have to understand where you're at, what you're doing, what your goals are. And I realized like this game that I'm playing is very dangerous.
Yeah.
And it more likely than not is going to end in my demise. And I'm the first to admit now, looking back on that, maybe that was a little doomsday-ish, because I mean, my platoon only lost like one person in the war. You know what I mean? I was very fortunate.
But it's a reality, and that's the difference. Is you looked at your reality and you had one of two options. Either you were going to come home or you're going to die. So it's a 50-50 chance, regardless of.
When the Ranger Regiment first started deploying, each battalion would do their rotation, and some guys would die and not come home. Each battalion, 1st battalion, 3rd battalion, 2nd battalion. And so when it was our rotation to go, I remember thinking, it's like, well, each battalion is losing people each rotation.
Yep.
I don't care if it's 1 or 2 or 5. The fact is, there's a guy getting on that C-17 Globemaster.
Ain't coming home.
And he didn't come home.
Yeah.
And it could just as likely be me when I step on that plane. It could be my last time I'm standing on American soil. And I feel like that taught me a lesson in life that I've really employed all the way into now being a 40-year-old man, is that the things that could potentially harm you or scare you or make you behave in a manner that's not congruent with your heart, it's all based in fear.
Yes.
And once you get rid of that fear, now you're free to live. And it goes back to like my initial video, like how you even found out who I was, right?
Yeah.
When I was sitting in my patrol car and I was thinking like, man, the behavior of our politicians and behaviors of a lot of our police officers, that's not congruent with who I am. That's not congruent with our oath. Like, I have to speak about this, right? And the thing is, nothing that I said was outrageous. Nothing that I said was like...
No, not at all.
You know what I mean? And I made the conscious decision in my head, don't put anyone on blast. Don't drop a bunch of F-bombs.
Don't make it about any specific person.
Don't make it about any specific person. Let's just talk about some overarching themes of liberty and our citizens' constitutional rights and our oaths. And I had so many people that were like, dude, I agree with you, man, but you can't fucking say that. Dude, you can't do that. They're going to come for you now. You can't do that. You can't do that. And now we live in a society of where most people believe a certain way, but they're controlled by that. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. And, well, I do understand, because they haven't confronted the fear yet. So now that fear, even into their 30s, 40s, and 50s, is still controlling them.
Yeah. So 2 things. The Bible says, and not that everything that I always bring about is based off the Bible, but I do have a foundation in that. And it says, man cannot serve two masters.
Mhm.
Either he's going to love one and hate the other, or he's going to cling to one and despise the other. The point of that being is you can't love freedom and love fear at the same time. You are going to choose. You have to choose. They don't coexist
I like that,
in
dude.
your life.
Yeah.
And and President JFK, he said, the only thing to fear is fear itself. It truly is. Either you are living, speaking, acting, being in alignment towards freedom, or you're doing that in alignment towards fear.
Yeah.
Either it's a fear-based narrative you're living or a freedom-based narrative.
And I think about this a lot because what is fear? And why is it something that is like ingrained into our DNA? And it's like, I understand that 10,000 years ago when I was going on a hunt and a saber-toothed tiger was stalking me, oh shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I need to take some measures to mitigate this risk or defend myself or put myself in a position where I can't be attacked. Like, I understand that fear is a tool, right? But fear has to be a tool to be utilized in a manner that's beneficial to you. So if I feel afraid of something, because I often say, like, I don't have the emotion of fear anymore. And that's true to a certain extent. Like, I'm not afraid of another man. I'm not afraid of my death. But at the same time, if I'm standing, I climbed a mountain last weekend and I was on top of a glacier and it got so dangerous that I was like, if I slip, I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
You have 3 kids at home. It's time to call it, right?
Right.
And I didn't feel it like, oh my God, I'm going to die. But it was like, I understand I'm feeling that this is very dangerous. And I utilized fear as a tool. And the Levi, who's like he's like a son to me, he was with me and he's 17 years old. And I said, Levi, how do you feel right now? And he goes, if you want to turn around, I want to turn around. He goes, but I want you to make the call. And I said, I want to know what you think. And he goes, I support the decision that you make. Which he's 17. He's looking to me for guidance, right?
So can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah, please do.
I don't think you're actually using fear as guidance. What you're doing is you're weighing risk versus reward and identifying what you want. Do you want to summit that mountain, or do you want to be with your wife and kids?
Yeah. And that's a good way of looking at it, right?
And so you identified what you wanted more, and we always get what we want.
Okay.
And
I like that.
You're like, okay, well, I'd rather spend more time with my family. So it's unsafe. There's a difference between fear and being unsafe.
Very true. Yeah.
Like a dangerous situation is a dangerous situation. Going into war is dangerous. That doesn't mean you have to be fearful when you go into war.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good distinction to make. But my whole point of that is, like, when you do confront things that you could articulate as fear or as danger, like, it is a tool that is ingrained in us, be it through evolution or your creator or like whatever you believe as an individual. Fear is a tool to help you survive. Fear is not a tool to incapacitate you. And I don't understand at what point in history the majority of people started to just allow fear to control them.
Yeah.
And who was it during the Nuremberg trials? Do you remember? Do you know who I'm referencing? I'm having a brain fart on his name right now.
I'm drawing a blank right now.
But that's what he said. They said, how did Nazi Germany
take over? He's like, well, we didn't have to do it militarily. You just had to instill fear into the people, and it's a cancer.
And I read like halfway through the Gulag Archipelago, and that's about all of the death camps and the labor camps throughout the Soviet Union. And it's the same thing. He's like, they just started doing things. He goes, they would snatch you up out of your bed in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And that's scary. So-and-so went to bed last night and the special police came in. We never saw him again. And he said, if they would have done it more overtly in a manner that was like, hey, we're taking over and we're going to start doing random arrests of people and you need to just sit down and take it. He goes, the people probably would have revolted, but because they did it like strategically in a manner that was scary.
Yeah.
He's like, man, everybody started becoming afraid of talking. Everybody started becoming afraid of asking, like, hey, where's so-and-so at? Where'd he go? Because if you talked or you questioned,
Yeah.
you might be next. And he said it created an environment where everybody was terrified of the secret police.
Fears in the shadows and the whispers.
Yeah. And then look, now you have what you have there. How many times throughout history do we have to allow a couple people, or not maybe even a couple people, but like a regime or a group of people allowed to instill fear and then control everybody through that fear?
Right.
And it's happening again.
So here's one of the interesting things is Benjamin Franklin, he said, instead of cursing the darkness, light a candle.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that darkness and light cannot coexist at the same time. When a room is dark and you turn on a light, that room is no longer dark.
Mm-hmm.
That is what fear is. Fear is the darkness. Freedom is the light. Courage is the light that is within freedom. And the minute that you flip that switch, that darkness has no place, no authority. But when you let that light get diminished and shrink down and let a candle burn out and that darkness comes back in, that is that fear. And this country and this world is looking for light bearers, people to start flipping the switches on and say, get out, fear, get out, darkness. You have no place here. And this is where, Jesus in the Bible, it talks about being the light of the world. We are meant to be the light of the world. And when we turn our light on and we let our light shine before men without fear of judgment, corruption, death, persecution, whatever it may be, you let your light shine and you live the life that you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's freedom. That's beauty. That the darkness disappears. Because at what point are we focusing? Because we're finite individuals, right? So like I hold this coffee cup and I'm thinking about this coffee cup. And now I'm not, because I'm thinking about this coffee cup, I'm not thinking about what's behind me.
Yeah.
We're so easy to like tunnel vision on something. And so, well, where do you want to put your energy in? I know you're huge into the whole energy thing, right? So if everything is energy, it's what, like a radio. Well, what do you want to listen to? What do you want to tune into? What do you want to absorb? Because it's all around us. It's just a matter of where we focus it. A laser's only as powerful as it is because it's focused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like whatever you feed yourself, whatever energy you give to yourself,
yes,
is going to have a direct impact on every other aspect of your life.
Yeah,
and that's why. I mean, I don't know. I try and stay grounded in reality, but it's like every time any radio turns on now, or you turn your phone on, or you turn your television on, it's like fear, 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 fear.
yes.
And it's a dichotomy, right? Because I try and the best thing for my family would probably be to take my fucking phone and smash it with a sledgehammer and never get on Instagram again, right? But the other side of it is, it's like, well, I don't just want to bury my head in the sand and not confront a lot of the problems in the world now and be aware of the problems. I mean, we saw yesterday U.S. Black Hawk helicopters being used to hang people.
No, I don't know how else to respond to that right there other than what I just did. That's horrible.
Did you see that?
Yes. Flying around, that's cool, right?
They're flying around Kandahar. So Kandahar Airfield, and they're using them to hang people. And it's like, I need to know the kind of shit that's going on in the world right now because I don't want to be an ostrich with my head in the sand. Because if you don't have an understanding of the darkness that is out there, it's that much harder to be the light, right? But then it's like, then I start to get wrapped up though, because it's like, let's be perfectly clear. You and I paid for that helicopter, okay? You teach, and I forget the statistic, but it's something like from January to March, every hour you work is for the federal government.
Wow.
And then after that, you can start having your own money now, right? So you're literally working from months out of the year to buy Black Hawk helicopters to give to the Taliban.
Yeah.
How are people not outraged to buy it, right? And people are, right? People are absolutely outraged. But my point of even bringing this up is that we do have to have an understanding of the evil that we're fighting and the inept corruption in our own government and all the things that just drive me crazy.
Well, you're a
But
military man. You
yeah,
understand that you don't go into war without knowing your enemy,
oh God,
right?
yeah,
Like, so this is we stand up for freedom, we stand up for justice, liberty, righteousness. Well, we also need to understand the other side.
mm-hmm.
You know, the art of war is only as powerful because it's the moves and counter moves and the war gaming, the game theory, the knowing how things play out, that if I hit you with my right hand, probably you're gonna then swing with your right hand.
Yeah.
You know, and knowing that move, counter move.
But you want to know what's even more upsetting than the stuff we're seeing with our enemy is that it's our fault. And by our, I mean our inept government that's in place right now. And it's like everything that we worked for, everything that we fought for, they're just, it's almost like they're purposely giving it back at this point.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so frustrating, and dude, I think Jocko nailed it. I don't know if you saw
I watched
Jocko's,
that video.
bro. He goes, if I was the president of the United States, my response would sound something like this. And if you're listening right now and you haven't seen that, go to his Instagram and watch it.
Yep.
And that was the first time, because I've been a Jocko fan because I like his leadership and I like his accountability and the way that he teaches people to really embrace the different aspects of those things. But this is the first time that he stepped up and basically told the administration, you're fucked up.
Mhm.
And he absolutely did that,
Yeah.
right?
He always teaches ownership.
And he said, if I was president of the United States, I would say something like this. I underestimated the Taliban. I overestimated Afghan security forces. And my mistake led to the problem that we're facing right now. But this is how I'm going to fix it, right? And it's like, oh, shocking. I mean, a man saw a problem that he caused. He addressed it. He owned it. And then he offered a solution. How is that an abstract idea for somebody that's the president of the United States? But then you saw the president on a podium the other day, and he goes, I'm not supposed to take any questions, but I guess I'll take one. Did you see this video? And the reporter goes, Mr. President, regarding Afghanistan. And he goes, I'm not talking about Afghanistan right now. And turned around and shuffled away like a little fucking coward. And it's like,
it's not a leader.
You caused one of the biggest fuck ups in military history, and you won't even talk about it.
Did you see one of the mothers of the Marines
No.
got censored off of Facebook and Instagram because when she was at the arrival of the caskets.
Oh, in Dover.
Yeah, and Biden went up to each parents or whatever, and she laid into them. It's like, blood is on your hands. All this is your fault, and just kind of went that direction. And then she went into a social media and told what happened. Facebook took it down.
Of course they did, dude.
I screenshotted it because I was like, I'm holding on to this bad boy.
And I mean, again, you can take any incident and kind of manipulate it to feed a narrative, right?
Correct.
But there's pictures of Biden standing there waiting for the caskets, checking his watch. And here's the thing. I don't know what his intentions were. I don't know if in his own brain, he's like, gotta get the fuck out of here. I got golf at 3:00. Yeah, but here's the reality of it. Perception is reality, right?
Yeah.
Perception is reality. So if you have a bunch of people there and you have reporters and you have families and you're checking your watch, like, fuck, what time is it? People are going to perceive that you just want to get out of here, right? And now that's the reality, and that's your fucking fault. Yeah. You caused this, and now you're making people perceive that you don't even care about it.
You know, the interesting thing is I was watching being a school teacher. A majority of school teachers are left leaning, which is, it's not about political sides. However, with that being said, the caveat to that is, what do you stand for? You know, if you believe these certain things and want to vote for certain people, whatever, but at the end of the day, what do you stand for? So I had as a teacher make a Facebook post, and they're like, yeah, you know, a lot of people are saying stuff bad about Biden and all this, but but he's still a better person. I'd rather have a kind and a respectful president than someone who's disrespectful like Trump. And I'm like,
Can I just hop in here real quick?
yeah.
They need to shut the fuck up about Donald Trump. Okay. They have been riding on it's better than Trump, or Trump did this, Trump did that. I'm trying to clean Trump's mess up. This is Trump's fault. This is Trump's fault. Like, you've been the president since January.
Yeah.
Start taking some fucking accountability and some ownership. The putting all the blame on everything on Trump, that ship has sailed.
Yeah. It's gone.
But that's all they got. So if that's all they got, what does that tell you? It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you or I were put into a position of leadership in school, let's say you were made vice president or vice principal, right? And the last vice principal just fucked up a lot of stuff. Would you ever if
No,
you were,
I wouldn't blame
if
it
you
on
were
them.
struggling to get to rein things back in and get things operating smoothly and professionally? How many times would you publicly say like, "Oh, this is really hard because my predecessor really fucked things up"? Like that is the opposite of ownership. That's cowardice.
We'll even talk about it on a classroom level, right?
Mhm.
I have my students. I don't all of a sudden make excuses, be like, "Oh, well, your last teacher really messed it up for you."
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I know my teaching, it doesn't matter because your last teacher messed it up so bad that my hands are in the air. Nothing, I can't do anything about it. And it's like, no, life is now. It's your job. It got passed to you. Now it's your turn.
So what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And passing the buck is just as soon as I hear someone passing the buck, I don't want to hear anything else that they have to say, because that is not rooted in problem solving.
Mhm.
That is rooted in just really self-preservation.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, it's not my fault. I'm good. You got to we're cool, right? I'm good. But that guy, he fucked things up. So point the finger over there. I mean, when I went to First Form a couple weeks ago and hung out with Andy Frisella, when I was walking in, they walked me into what's called the Leadership Library. And there's 100 different books in there, and there's 50 copies of each of them. And it's like David Goggins Can't Hurt Me, Jocko Extreme Ownership, and a bunch of leadership and accountability books. And it goes, hey, grab as many as you want. You can the Leadership Library is for everybody that comes to First Form, visitors or employees. And if you want to better yourself, grab a book and read it.
Yep.
And so I wanted to grab one of each, but I just grabbed one because I didn't want to look like
well, I'll take a couple of these. Yeah.
But my point is, it's like, there's people that understand that leadership and accountability is really the foundation for everything.
Yeah.
And our political leadership has lost sight of that. And I don't understand how we've arrived at this place, but I mean, fuck, dude, it is what it is.
Well, not that I know everything, but I do.
None of us know everything.
But I will say that a lot of this reason of why the leadership or our quote unquote so-called leadership has failed is because people aren't leaders in their own lives.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
I'm a leader of my own house.
Yeah.
And if I don't have a wife or children and I'm a single individual, you're still a leader of your life. And I think that's the thing is a house isn't built from the top up or top down. It's built from the ground up. You build that foundation. And so if your society is not taking leadership and accountability and ownership in their own lives, then they're quick to be like, okay, here, you do this for me. You do this for me. You do this for me. And that's the issue is that a society that is wanting stuff from the government to save them, they're not saving themselves.
Yeah, they're putting that leadership on somebody else instead of being their own leader. And that's a phenomenal point.
Yeah. And if they're putting their leadership on somebody else, well, do you know that their internet browsing history? Do you know what they're actually like when the TV screen's off, when the cameras aren't on? Because the minute you pass your leadership onto somebody else and say, okay, hands are up, this is your call now. And
this person's going to save me. Yes. That's what everybody's hoping for. And dude, I like that point because, of course, I voted for Trump, right? But I didn't vote for Trump because he's going to save me.
No.
You know what I mean? I voted for Trump because I believe, and I still believe, that he was taking this country in a better direction than the left was taking this country. And we can discuss that all day if you're on the other side of the political spectrum. But I'm still going to live my life how I live my life,
Correct.
regardless of who's in office. I'm going to focus on my family. I'm going to focus on my fitness. I'm going to focus on my capabilities. I was never looking to Donald Trump to be the messiah that was going to save me. But the left was looking at whoever was coming in here was going to
they looked at Barack Obama as almost like the Messiah.
Yeah. And it's like, as soon as you put your future and your like ability to prosper into somebody else's hands, now they fucking own you, you know? And that's what we're seeing with all of these people. Like, if you think Trump just drove this country into the ground like the left thinks that he did, and you just think Joe Biden's just going to come and everything's going to be better.
Well, let's make it into the financial aspect, right? Mm-hmm. The minute that you're like, well, I'm stuck here. I'm stuck in this house. I'm stuck in this car. Maybe I don't own a car because I can't make money. It's all about someone else. The minute that you're passing your leadership skills onto somebody else is a minute that your life is never going to be fulfilling for yourself.
Yeah, because you're going to become stagnant.
Right. You want to make money? Then go make more money. I don't care how many jobs it takes or how many different skill sets you have. Learn, grow.
And the formula's out there because there's a lot of rich people in America.
It's what the American dream is, right?
Yeah.
Make your life whatever you want.
Yep.
You know, either you are green and growing or you're ripe and rotten.
Yeah.
You know, you're going.
Man, you got a lot of good little nuggets. I'm gonna have to listen to this and write all these down, dude.
It's the coach in me. It's but that's the thing is like so many people are just so quick to just be like, no, I need the. Well, how many now hiring signs are you seeing around town?
Yeah, of course, everywhere.
Right. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's easier to get a paycheck from the government than it is to go get off your couch, turn Netflix off, turn off the video games, and go work.
Well, and it doesn't matter what you're pursuing.
Yeah.
The right choice is the harder choice.
Yeah.
Period.
Right.
The easy choice is never going to help you arrive at the next level. I always talk about leveling up. You're like a video game character.
Yes.
And when you're 20 and you just flew the coop and you don't know who the fuck you are at all, that's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And you're trying to navigate through life. And as you start to grow and develop skill sets and learn about who you are, you start to level up and level up and level up. And I feel like at 40 years old, I've arrived at a level. And don't misconstrue this into thinking I have it figured out, because I'm the first to say I've realized that as you grow, you start to move through these levels, and I've moved into a level where I'm comfortable understanding like you are a leader now. People are looking to you for some answers, and you are qualified to offer some answers. You were qualified to mentor people, because for a long time I had imposter syndrome where it's like, dude, why are people looking to me? I'm just a fucking guy, right? But I like the role that I'm in now. But I understand where I'm at is a moment in time, and this is who I am right now.
Yeah.
And when I'm 60, I will look back on who I am right now and be like, man, he had a lot of growing to do, right? You have to continue being a student of the game. And again, always goes back to jujutsu analogies. People are throwing things at their radio. Would he stop talking about jujutsu? But when I got my black belt, the day I got my black belt versus who I am today is night and day.
Yeah.
Because you never stop growing. And it's an analogy for life. The color of your age or the color of your belt, it's a moot point. Yeah. You continue to grow and you continue to grow. And I think that's a concept that's kind of lost on people. You're never going to arrive.
So in the education system, which is 100% completely broken, they always talk about lifelong learners. You got to be a lifelong learner. I'm like, well, first off, then you need to start talking about affirmation. So all you people listening to this podcast, if you are a parent or you want to be a parent, take this to your heart. Start speaking into the lives of your children and tell them, I have affirmations. I have on the back of my phone, my backdrop of my phone says, it's a contract with myself. Mm-hmm. I am an inspiring. Oh man.
You want to just grab it and read it?
Dude, I got put on the spot. I got all nervous right there. It's like, ooh man, I'm sharing my contract with the world. I am an inspiring, loving leader. I'm an inspiring, powerful, loving leader. And that is my contract. That's my contract with myself every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm inspiring, loving, powerful leader. And I get to be that everywhere I go, in my job, in my relationship. And so, but those are the three things that I took away. I'm powerful, I'm inspiring, I'm loving, and I'm a leader. I could have been a man, I could have been a dude. I'm a leader. Now, speak into the lives of your children. Instead of us, I got so many different thoughts rolling through my head right here, so I got to clarify. When I lay next to my children at night and I'm putting them to bed, I got done reading to them or whatever, I say, repeat after me. I am loving. And they say, I am loving. Say, I am powerful. They say, I am powerful. Say, I am courageous. I am courageous. And you start repeating this, and words are powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts become words, words become reality. And so if you start thinking a certain way about yourself and you start practicing and speaking life, and this goes back to the whole plant thing, right? You start speaking to plants, they respond in positive ways. Well, speak to your children in positive ways and instill in them who they are. Now, they get to then identify what are the traits that they really want to explore and grow and produce. And at the same time, like the educational system is like, well, this is grade 1, this is grade 2, this is grade 3. My wife and I had a discussion last night because she's homeschooling for the very first time. She's like, I'm really nervous. Like this books that I got for our kids, it feels like they're going to be through it a lot quicker. I was like, perfect. Then go on to the next one.
Well, and I pulled all 3 of my kids out of public school, and that is how they learn now at their new school. Is the curriculum just continues.
Yeah.
And you work through it at your speed. And it's an interesting concept because it's not like this is what being a first grader is. This is being, and I can tell you because my oldest is in private school for the first time. She starts next week. But my younger 2, I started them last year, and they grew by leaps and bounds. And you're a public school educator.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I know it.
And so as soon as you get done with this point, I'm going to ask the question that all the audience is wondering. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this concept of, provide the next book, like we are sponges, and either we're going to allow our sponge to dry out and crackle and then we die, that's the green and growing or the ripe and rotten, or we just continue to soak it in. And my wife's like, well, what if they're not at standard? And I'm like, what the fuck is standard?
Yeah.
I'm a human being, and we're going to learn and we're going to grow regardless. Some have different paces, some have different experiences that help grow their knowledge. But at the end of the day, you're not going to let your kid not know how to read, or not know how to spell, or not know how to do math. And she looked at me and she was like, wow, you're right. The whole idea of the societal box is judgment. It's judgment based.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can't fit within this right here, you're broken.
Yeah.
And you're not broken.
Well, and dude, it makes me think of like my high school girlfriend. And I mean, I was a senior and she was a sophomore, right? And very smart girl, but she was dyslexic. And everybody always told her like, oh, you like not straight up told her to like demean her, make her feel bad. But the understanding amongst teachers and family members and stuff is like, well, you probably never amount to much.
Yeah.
And that's how she felt about herself. And I remember sitting down, and I mean, I was an 18-year-old kid, or maybe I was 20 and she was 18 or whatever, but we were kids, right? And I was like, all these people that are fucking saying that you can't do this or you won't be able to do that, every one of them can go fuck themselves. I mean, so
By the way, I love how you put so much emphasis on the part.
But it's so I've been me for a long time, right? And I was like, you have to be you. And you have to become the best version of you. You need to figure out how to be you, And fast forward a couple of years, and she's like, because we were together for a really long time, and she's like, I learned this new method to learn, and I don't know what that is. So if you're dyslexic and you're listening, I'm sorry. But she said, like, I'm able to retain stuff. I'm able to study now, and it's a different thing. And now she is a cancer research scientist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She's not dumb.
No.
She never was dumb, but people led her to believe she was because she was different. And it's like, that's exactly what you're saying. You know, it's like, this is the box. This is how we educate. This is how we learn. This is what we teach. And if you're outside of that, well,
Well, and then that goes with this is mainstream media. This is how we do things. And I was in a meeting the other day, and this one teacher all of a sudden just went on a rant and was like, I've been teaching. This is my 31st year of teaching. And for 30 years, I just went along with the system, and I'm sick of it. And I'm going to fight against the white supremacy stereotype that's within education. And this is all about cultural sensitivity training that we're in. And I'm sitting here, and she's a white person, and here I am as a hunter, because now here's where the hunting comes into play.
mm-hmm.
Hunting is hated by a large majority of people.
And I want to know what majority of those people eat meat.
Correct. So here I am. It's like, okay, cultural sensitivity is not just skin color.
Yeah.
And I told her that, and I stood, and this is all through like a virtual meeting. And I'm like, just so you know, cultural isn't just skin color. Cultural is, society, how we grow up, different things, Here I am with this, I got my Zoom, my camera on, my
elk
giant elk head, that not a single teacher said anything about. And I'm like, I guarantee you're judging me based off of what's on my wall behind me. So what are you actually gonna do about it? Because these people that say, "Oh, I'm gonna fight against this. I'm gonna fight against this." Well, what do you actually stand for? Because you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth if you're living this way and then saying this.
Yeah.
And I understand that the liberal left is upset with the systems in which is governing the world. Like their education system's broken. But it doesn't mean it's the white man's fault or it's any man's fault. It's like, this goes back to the leadership of your own life.
Well, and that became the go-to for every problem that our society is facing. The problems in law enforcement, the problems in education, the problems in any aspect of our life. It's because they're racist and white men.
It's like what you said earlier. You just point that finger. Oh no, it's their fault.
Yeah. It's the stupidest fucking thing you could ever, the dumbest conclusion you could ever draw. But if enough people believe it, then you have this horde of people that it's like, we're on this team and we all believe this way.
Right.
And it's like, it's a massive amount of people having like a collective absence of ownership.
Yes.
And think about that. Because
and those are the ones that are educating and influencing the younger generation.
So this is what I was going to ask you, because every person listening right now is probably disgusted with the public school system, right? Yeah. You're an educator in the public school system, and you pulled all your kids out.
Yep.
I pulled all my kids out.
Yeah.
But this is something that is a reality that a lot of people are facing. I found a school that is working with us for price, and that they're very affordable. It's $20,000 a year. All right. And
I actually tried to get my kids into that school, and they didn't have enough room.
Yeah. And there's no room in any of them anymore. And so you have to have an additional $20,000 if you want to put your kids. And a lot of people that are struggling to make ends meet, public school is the only option for them. Well, so now they feel like their kids are going there, they're being indoctrinated, and they're being taught things, like you said, that are based on people's like opinions and their cultural insensitivities, or their not insensitivities, but their sensitivities.
So yeah,
So what do you say to those people that are like, because you've said several times the system is broken, but they might not, if it's a single mom who has 2 kids at home and she has to work 45 hours a week, this might be her only option.
So
what do you say to those people?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I feel for you. And because I live an and life, not an or life. It's not this or that. It's this and that. I live a life.
Another nugget, dude.
I live a life of abundance. I truly believe that there is enough. My cup is overflowing. But it goes back to what I said at the very beginning of this podcast. What do you want?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you value your children as much as you, and I'm going to hold up quotes because you say that you value your children, then you would actually put their education before anything.
Yeah.
Now, One of the downsides is, and this is where I started my hunting community, and I know you're huge in community. In a broken society, such as a single mother, it takes a community of support to support that person. It's time for us to find our community, seek our community. Now, community doesn't just naturally come to you. And this is the thing that I'm teaching my children, and I want to teach my students in public education. Is like, if you want anything, you always get what you want, but it takes action, because no action is action. And I always say on my podcast, you can't outgive good. When you put good out into the world, if you've done the exact same thing your entire life and expected different results,
that's crazy.
That's crazy. Insanity. It's insanity. So you have to make a change. And if it's costing you your money, well, figure it out. I'm not a rich person. I'm a public educator. I'm a single income family, and I'm still willing to go private school and pay the $20,000 if that's what it takes. The issue is if you're constantly doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result, you have to change what you're doing. And for you to find a community, maybe you have your parents or aunts and uncles or cousins or friends, but this is why the whole concept of, and I'm going to say the church, was powerful. It's not the church because the church is like a government and it's giving handouts. The church is this right here. We're sitting at our table. You're in my community now. I'm in your community. I know that whatever I lack, I can call on you and you can support me, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so when you start seeking and putting out into the world what you want, you're always going to get it.
Yeah.
It's always going to be there. It takes work. Let me just say this. It's not like an ATM. Life isn't like an ATM where you're like, oh, I could use some support in this area, or I could use some help here. I could use new friends, or blah, 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 blah. No, it takes action. For me to learn how to hunt, I set off on this journey. I made the decision. I said, what do I value? What do I want? Made the decision, went after it. It took me 4 years. Excuse me. It took me 4 years to kill my first animal. That's a journey. But the year that I killed my first animal was also the year that I had my first community event. And I haven't even probably shared this with you, but I was like, I don't have anyone that hunts around me. I want to know. I want to gain knowledge. I want to build community, friendship, support. And so I went to social media and I said, hey, I'm going to host an event here at this day at this brewery, this brew pub. All ages are welcome. I had 13 people at that event. 8 of them I didn't know, never met before. Drove from all over the state of Washington because they just randomly saw this thing and they're like, that sounds like something I should go check out. And now my events, which last time
wait, give more details about that event. You were looking for people that were aspiring to be hunters, or people that were hunters, and wanted to let's bounce knowledge around, and
all the above. So this is where we haven't really gotten into my hunting story at all, and this is a beautiful story.
All right, let's go into it right now. I like it.
So, we'll back up. My very first hunt where I killed my very first animal has to do with courage. I always spent every August backpacking and doing multiple miles out in the mountains. Well, it wasn't until 2017 that I realized that you could carry a gun and backpack at the exact same time. And I was like, dude, I already do this. I have everything I need. I just need to carry a weapon. And so Black Bear opened in the state of Washington August 1st. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I'm going to start hunting bears. Bears is my thing because I was coaching high school football, and the weekend warrior mentality. I didn't have, 10,000 hour rule, Malcolm Gladwell. You spend 10,000 hours doing something, you're going to reach a level of mastery. Well, if I'm only going a Saturday and a Sunday 2 times every fall, it's going to take me a long time to get really good at it.
How many years do you have left on planet Earth?
Well, and you said if you only train jujitsu 2 days a month, you're never really going to get good at it. And so that's the whole concept. And so I was like, oh, well, I have August before school starts, before football starts, that I can dedicate to hunting. So I found this place. I backpacked 9 miles in, and I'm like, okay, I'm away from the crowd. I'm not going to be disturbed. I ended up recruiting 2 guys to come with me. And on that hunt, we're searching for black bears. I ended up killing a black bear on that trip. But the night before I killed that bear, I remember laying in my tent being like, I really hope bears don't come into camp tonight, because I was scared. I was a scared person. And, society sets up fear.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the big bear, the big bad guy, the whatever analogy you want to use is always out to get you. There's always somebody out to get you. I'm like, no, I'm going to stand in who I am. And so I had to face my fear. So 9 miles deep in the backcountry, I ended up shooting my first bear. And after that hunt, I packed it out solo. My other 2 buddies were still hunting, which that was a whole learning experience. Twisted my ankle, fell down. Like, it was nasty. Had, the whole bear hide, the meat, all this. So it was over 100 pounds in a backpack, struggling down a mountain. And I'm already scared of bears. And touching it was like life-changing for me. And then this group that had a social media group came into the same area, and they're like, oh man, they filmed their hunt. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, we're bear hunting. And they're like, have you seen any? I was like, well, we killed one already. And they're like, oh man. And I was like, well, how did you guys all meet? And they're like, oh, Instagram. I was like, you guys all met because of Instagram? And they're like, yeah. I was like, I need to explore this, because I need a bigger community.
Yeah.
I need a community. And so when I got home from that hunt, I was like, I'm already a DJ. I'm good on a mic. I can public speak. I'm a school teacher. I'm going to host my own event, because it's like Field of Dreams, right? If you build it,
they will come.
They will come.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I put on social media. I only had probably like 40 followers, maybe 100. And all these people showed up, and it got to a point where now I can hunt, and it's not a bragging thing, but what I built,
just the proof in the pudding.
It's the proof in the pudding that I have the ability to hunt with almost anyone in this world. Now, the opportunities are endless because I put myself out there. And so my last community event, I had 100 people at. It was a packed house. We raised $5,000 for Seattle Children's Hospital. I mean, the things that we're doing for the community now go beyond just hunting.
Mm-hmm.
But it all started with the knowledge of, I know what I want, and I know I need my community, and the community provides. And
It's awesome hearing you say that, because if I've learned anything over the last year, it's that putting yourself out there builds relationships with people. And it's to a point now where I'm wondering if I'm in a simulation, or like
the Matrix.
Yeah, or if it's what was it, the Truman Show?
Yes.
Where it's like everything's predetermined, and you're just going through the motions, because everything works out so well when you put yourself out there and you meet people. And it was literally like this podcast. Andy Stump reached out to me, and I built a relationship with him. And that got me some notoriety in the podcasting world. And I did a handful of other shows.
Mm-hmm.
And each show that I did, because I was getting like hundreds of requests, come do my podcast, come do my podcast. I couldn't even respond to most of them. So what I would do is I would just look through and be like, click on the guy's profile, kind of, see who he is as a person, or who she is as a person, and be like, okay, like, this guy seems like a good person. I'll do his show.
Yeah.
That guy seems like a good person. I'll do his show. And I did like Ryan Mickler's show, and Wellness Force with Josh Trent, and all these different shows that I just kind of randomly chose. And each show that I chose benefited me somehow, or it built a relationship. And it's like, I did a show with a production company that heard my story, and they reached out to me and said, hey, we want to produce, if you ever want to do a podcast, we'll produce it.
There you go.
And it's Operation Podcast, and that's who I'm working with today. And it's like all of these little pieces continue to fall into place, because just like you said, I'm putting myself out there.
Yeah.
I'm getting to know people.
Yeah.
I'm building that community. And once you start to see like the fruits of that labor, it's almost like it's magic, you
Yes.
know?
Well, you have not because you ask not,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's as a teacher, I'm never going to be able to support a child in their learning if they don't advocate for their own self.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, I can go through and be like, hey, do you understand? Do you understand? But the most powerful thing that a person can do is raise their hand and be like, I have a question. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a question. Let's address it. And it's courage. It goes back to courage, breaking the norm. It's easy for the whole class to sit there with their hands down. It's hard for that one student to raise their hand.
What's always funny is when I'm teaching jujitsu, especially this summer was hot. And I don't know if it was
It was hot.
I don't know if it was like actual like record temperatures, but I also think it was because my gym has grown tremendously. So I have 30 people at class as opposed to 5.
Yeah.
And so it's like the BTUs that the human body's putting out. Dude, it felt like we were in a sauna.
Yeah.
And so I'd always be like, all right, let's take a water break if you're weak. Or you can be hard and not drink water. And obviously I'm just joking, right? But everybody would always sit there and be like, who's going to be the first to grab a water?
Yeah.
And someone would stand up and be like, well, I'm weak and I'm thirsty. So I'm going to, and they'd go grab a water. And then like 7, 8, 10 other people be like, okay, I can go get a water break now. Right. Yeah. And it's because it's like,
it takes the first courageous person.
Yeah. Even something as silly that's even kind of a joke. It's still like, it's the human psyche. It's like, I don't want to be first.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, they're scared to be first.
Yeah.
It goes back to the fear. Everything is fear-based if you allow fear to rule.
Uh-huh.
You're never, if you are afraid, you're never going to get what you want in this world. Because it takes action. It takes courage. It takes trying new things, doing new things. I don't even like the word try because like Master Yoda, there's no try, there's only do or do not. Well,
or something they say in the Marine Corps is trying's failing.
Oh, there you go. But that's the thing is like for the single mother who doesn't have the money to be able to put her child in private school or to be able to homeschool. Well, take action and do something to build a community of support. There are co-ops of homeschooling and different opportunities out there because public education
is not going to save you.
It's not the answer.
Yeah. I love that your answer to that because as you were speaking, I was thinking about my own life because as a jiu-jitsu coach, there's lots of kids that come through my academy. And one family was a single mom with 2 young boys, and they were like 10 and 11 when they started, right? And they didn't have like a masculine influence in their life. And I was drawn to these kids, and we started doing things outside of the gym. And I started taking them fishing. We started going backpacking and things like that, right? And I built a relationship with these kids. And and now they're 17 and 18, and that's who I went and climbed Mount Olympus with last weekend.
So cool.
And it's like we look at each other like family now. And I helped them grow as young men, but I always tell them like I don't want that to be about like, oh, look what I did for you. Helping them grow into young men helped me tremendously too, because being able to provide that mentor role to young men is very fulfilling to me. And it's funny because I've talked about this on Instagram before, and it doesn't matter how much good you're doing, somebody hates it, right? Yeah. And I was talking about mentoring these boys, and I consider these boys family. I would die for them tomorrow. Somebody said on the comments, they're like, don't you have your own kids to worry about? Why are you investing in so much energy into other people's kids?
Because you can't outgive good.
I wish I had that, Yeah. But it's like, it's just a bizarre thing. But I like what you said is like, if you're in a situation like their mom was, where struggling to make ends meet and having a hard time, put yourself out there. And by put yourself out there, their option to employ was a martial arts academy. And that started building that community that you talked about. You got to put yourself out there to build that community. And it was interesting as you were speaking that, I was like, oh, he's literally telling the story of what I experienced with this single mother. So it's cool.
The really interesting and amazing thing, by the way, I'm proud of you for doing that. And if no one ever like says something like that to you, the acknowledgement of your actions of putting good out into the world, look at what it's brought back.
Well, and I'll tell you, I appreciate that. And I mean, accepting compliments is like, there's an art to that, because I used to get kind of like, oh, like, well, why is he saying this to me?
It's a self-worthiness.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't feel worthy of a compliment.
Yeah, exactly. But and it goes back to like growing into who I am and being proud of. It's like when you tell me that you're proud of me, that makes me feel good, and I can accept that, you know. But I got to tell you, the other week, same thing. I took this young man fishing, and now that he's 17 and he is growing into his own person, he told me straight up. He goes, I just want to thank you, because without a father figure in my life throughout my youth, I wouldn't have been able to grow into the man that I am.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that one comment like really is solidified. Like, that's, you changed somebody's life.
So my organization for hunting is called Washington Backcountry.
Mm-hmm.
Our slogan that we stand upon is mentorship is conservation. If you want something to last for generations to come, you need to invest into it. And investing into it can be a lot of different ways. I have it be time, and time is love. It's another avenue of giving into someone else's life. So with that, I believe that the ripple effect is real. So he said, I wouldn't have been able to make it through my adolescence without a father figure. Well, now he has a skill set as what it means to be a man, so that now you didn't just impact him, you impacted him and every other person that he interacts with, and you impact him and the children he's going to have. And the legacy that you are creating, not giving, not handing over, by the action in which you take, you gave life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what this world is all about. It's this energy, a transfer of energy. It goes from one to another.
And when you give, and I always say this, like, to a certain point, we're all self-serving, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, when you give and then people receive, damn, it feels good.
Dude, it feels horrible to give a gift and have someone be like, ooh.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But it's like there's something inside of you that when you give somebody something and they're eager to receive it, it's like, yes.
Okay.
And I wonder where that stems from, but it's powerful and it's real.
Being a servant of all, not a slave of all, but a servant of all. The concept of, have you ever fed hungry people, like homeless? Like, have you ever gone outside of your norm?
Yes. I mean, I've done like the Christmas drives, where you're bringing presents to.
What did you get from that?
Yeah, you do feel like a fulfillment.
Yes. And it doesn't matter. There's different types of fulfillments, right? So it's not the same as like when you're on the gym, on the mat floor rolling around. It's a different, for sure. Because we have, there's 6 parts of health and wellness: the spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and then the vocational aspect of what makes us a healthy and a well individual. So when we give, it addresses a lot of these things in our lives, and it supports us, and you can't outgive good. It's like you work out and then you shower, you're like, oh, I feel good.
Yeah.
When you go give into someone else's life, it makes you feel really good.
It does. Like, I don't know if I told you this, but I went down to Mexico with Baja Christian Ministries, and we built, and it was, I did tell you this because it was with John Youngquist, Chad's dad. And we built houses for the homeless. And again, there were people that criticized that. Like, there's homeless people in America. Why are you helping people in Mexico? And it's like, over here, over there, they're human beings, right? Mm-hmm. The truth is, building houses in America, there's so much red tape. It's almost impossible, right?
Yeah.
But you can go to Mexico and find a homeless family, and literally in 48 hours with a team of builders, build them a house and hand them the key. And it's like, you just changed somebody's life. And it's like, did you change the world? No, but you changed the world for one person. Yeah. And that is powerful.
But you changed. So I don't know. I'm going to say you did change the world, because if, like Michael Jackson said, we are the world. We are its children. Well, then you actually did change the world.
Mm-hmm. But, and I also had some people be like, well, you're not a Christian. And it's like, I don't know where I fall spiritually.
Yeah.
I think that's a continued journey for me. And it's something that I'm new at. And we talked about this on your podcast. It's like, I do understand now that life is bigger than this flesh suit that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something beyond this that's powerful and that's spiritual. But I also don't feel like I have a good enough understanding to be like, this is the religion that I fall in, or this is what happens when I die, because I'm not far enough in that journey yet. So, and I had people ask me like, well, why would you go down there with a Christian ministry if you're not a Christian? It's like, because somebody needed help.
Yes. Is it hard to help someone?
It's like, I don't care what religion they are. They shouldn't care what religion I am. If I'm in a position to help someone and they're in a position of need and we can have that transfer.
Yeah.
Dude, it's fucking awesome. You know? And it's strange that people put all these like little caveats and nuances on just being a good person.
Dude, you're getting me all like jacked up right now. I'm like, okay, I got so much to say.
Yeah.
It's easy to cast judgment from a safe spot.
Mm-hmm.
But growth doesn't come from safety. Being better doesn't come from comfort. It's, you talk about micro dosing adversity. I talk about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, because if you literally take the physical anatomy, being a physical education teacher, you only get muscles and larger muscles by working them out.
Yeah.
And working them out is not always easy. It's not fun. It's stress. There's two types of stress. There's eustress and there's distress. You know, you like hear a damsel in distress, like, oh no, save me. Well, eustress is stress on your body, but it's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good for you. And so it's easy to be like, oh, why are you doing that? You know, you better take the jab, blah, 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 all these different things. It's like, well, you're saying this from your place of like comfort on the couch.
Yeah.
Or keyboard warrior, all this. Put yourself in a place of action and discomfort, and then let's see what you really think.
And I talk about this all the time on the show, because people think because I'm a black belt or I was an Army Ranger that like I must be some super motivated Jocko-like figure. I am inherently the laziest person you know.
I think humans are inherently lazy.
Bro, I inherently want to eat pizza every single day. And if you put a Papa John's large pepperoni in front of me, the whole thing will disappear. And then I'll go put on like a Netflix special and just fucking feel like Jabba the Hutt sitting in my bed. Just, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And put on like a Jim Gaffigan stand-up.
Yep.
And I don't want to get up and go for a run.
No.
I don't want to sit in my ice bath. I don't want to do any of these things. The only reason that I do is because I've realized, probably a lot through my military service, where I didn't get a choice. My microdosed adversity was wake up at 6 a.m. and be in formation, and you're going on a death march.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to go out in the woods for 4 days and you're going to freeze your ass off. The Army made me do a bunch of stuff that sucked. And then I realized, dude, and it's funny because me and Levi talked about it this weekend, because we walked 24 miles in one day.
Yeah.
Over glacier and rock and tree roots. And it was, I'm going to say that it was probably the hardest day of my life.
Awesome.
At 40 years old. And I told him that.
Awesome.
I said, Levi, I've never been this broken. I've never felt like my feet were no longer working. And finally, my mind started to shut down. Mm-hmm. And it was weird. I was like getting nauseous. Every step was painful. And I said, Levi, this might be the hardest day of my life. And he goes, really? Like, because I mean, I was an Army Ranger in Afghanistan, right? And I said, if they made you feel like this in Afghanistan, I'm combat ineffective right now. Like, I can barely walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
The military doesn't want you to feel like this on the battlefield. The military tries to bring you to this point in training, but they can only, like, I think my longest movement in the Ranger Regiment was 30 something miles. Yeah. And we broke 40 this time.
Man.
And I said, but and I said, it's funny because I don't enjoy what I'm doing right now. Right.
Yeah.
But guess what? The shower that I'm going to take the next morning, that shower is going to feel 1,000 times better than the shower you feel when you just get out of bed.
Yes.
And it's going to feel so good that it makes this misery worth it. And it's the same thing with like in Ranger School, they starve you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get an MRE with like a gross pack of beef stew
And you're like, ugh.
that you probably wouldn't eat right now if I paid you to eat it.
Yeah.
But it was so good.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's
Yes.
because you put yourself in situations that are so hard that you really appreciate the little things in life. And it's like how we were we were walking back talking about, can you imagine if we had a burrito right now?
Yes.
You know?
I hate pickles. Hate them. Like I had an uncle who, my dad's brother, who when I was a little kid, we'd go over to his house and he'd be like, I'd be a little kid, I'm hungry. And he'd be like, well, I got pickles in the fridge. And he opened up his fridge. It had like 6-pack of beer and a thing of pickles. I'm like, I'll starve. And so over my journey of getting into hunting, I also learned that I want to put myself in a position of, I want to be the best version of myself. And that involved running. I
Mhm.
played college football, college lacrosse. I played, at a high level of competition. Well, when that ended, what was the next thing to keep me sharp? And so I took up running. And this last year before COVID hit, which pissed me off, man, I was going to run my very first 100-mile ultra marathon.
Which
Now,
one was it?
one in Washington, I don't know, something over Tri-Cities area.
Okay.
So up until that point, and this goes back all the way to when I killed my very first bear. When I packed out 9 miles solo, I also had to go 9 miles back in the same day to get all my gear because we were still hunting for my other buddies. Well, that's 18 miles. And that, 18 miles to some people may sound like a ton, or some people it doesn't. The thing was, that was physically harder, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I then ran a marathon, my very first marathon, a month later or 2 months later, and I was like, well, that was only like 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. And so I started training for an ultra marathon. Why this goes full circle into pickles is when I was training for my ultra marathon, I did a 40-mile day in 7 hours. That's a long ways to go.
It's gnarly.
And when I was doing a loop, and so I swung by a car, and my buddy who was training with me, he was like, I got pickles. And I was like, yeah, give them to me. I really want those right now.
Because
And
it's great for electrolytes.
yes. And at the same time, I've never enjoyed a pickle. That was the only time. Even like now, if you were to pull out pickles, I'd be like, no, thank you. But something inside me craved.
Yes.
And when you put yourself in those difficult situations, that adversity, you realize just how special each moment is and everything in life is. And so whether it's a pickle or you looking at your children and being like, you're half of me and half of your mom, and you are so special who you are and what you are. And it makes you love life that much more. And where there's love, there's freedom. And when there's freedom, there's not fear because they can't coexist. And so this full circle of like when you start putting yourself into difficult situations, the rainbows of life, the color of life, you're no longer living this black, white, gray, boring, mundane world. All of a sudden everything starts popping. It's like, oh my gosh, did you see that butterfly? Smell this flower. Oh, did you see the way that person looked at me, or the compliment, or you feed the homeless or whatever it is. All of a sudden life has vibrance to it.
Well, and dude, that's so important. And I love hearing you say that kind of stuff because like Mitch and he always talks about being the violent hippie, right? And it's because once you do appreciate things, you do love that butterfly.
Yes.
And it's like for a Navy SEAL or an Army Ranger to say something like that, a lot of people are like, oh, you're a fag, dude. And it's like, no, it's actually like, you can still be violent and capable and you can be a special operations guy, but start to love the little things. And that's where his violent hippie came from, because he's like, I'm still capable, I'm still a fighter, but I do love nature and I love animals and I love people and I love making people feel good. And it's like, I think you have to come to that realization as a person before things really start to come together.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Violent warriors, but tenderhearted. And tenderhearted, not but, because but negates what I said beforehand. So it's an and life.
Yeah.
So a tender-hearted warrior. When I stepped into your gym and all of a sudden I see how violent and fast and overwhelming you can be or what you need to be, and then you take a step back and then still can hug your child, kiss
Hmm.
your wife, and
Or even
have a tea party
or even shake the hands of the man that you were just trying to kill.
yes,
You know?
yes,
Yeah, excuse me. I say like I want a human being that's going to be inside of my circle of people. I want them to have two attributes, and it's kindness and toughness.
yes,
Because I think if you have those two things, if you are kind and you are tough, the stars are the limit,
yeah,
because that's something that you can be tough as shit and you can be an asshole. You're not probably going to be a good fit for my people.
right.
Or you can be super kind, but if you're just a pushover and you're spineless and you're not capable, again, you're not a good fit. You have to have the balance of kindness and toughness.
So true. It's so interesting that everyone loves like hero movies or hero stories.
Yes.
And if you actually dive in English teachers in middle school and high school always talk about this narrative of the hero, the hero's journey. Well, what is it that actually makes up an actual hero? And why do people love it? And yet, why do we, and the royal we, why do we cower away from it?
It's interesting. I think about that a lot, especially when we grew up, when it was Commando
Hmm.
and Braveheart and like Predator and all of these movies. What did people and all of Stallone's movies and Rambo? What drew people to that style of movie? And they don't make them anymore like they used to, by the way.
Nope.
And it was uncompromising men.
Yes.
There's something about an uncompromising man, or I'm just saying man because of those movies, but an uncompromising woman is just as powerful, right?
Human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An uncompromising person that will stand behind their convictions
Yeah.
at all costs. And that was Commando. Like, he's like, you took my daughter, now I'm going to fucking kill all of you. And like, that gets people, it touches people in a way. And yeah, it's a silly Arnold movie and like it's cheesy and it's the 80s. But there's something about when you see a person that is unwilling to compromise their values, dude,
Yeah.
it draws you in and it makes you feel like, yes,
So,
you know?
yeah. So what it is they have something that they stand for.
Mm-hmm.
And when you identify what you stand for, everything else falls in line. Now, I am recording a podcast with you. I'm not perfect. I'm not like everything is a challenge. And that challenge is the decision of what I want.
Well, and that's why I always tell people I'm inherently lazy
Yeah.
because I think we all are.
Yeah.
It's a choice, you know?
Yeah. It goes back. It's so interesting. What I was talking to my wife, and this goes back to the public school versus homeschooling versus adversity versus whatever. Like all these narratives come together with freedom or tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
So, the very first time I cheated on a school assignment was in first grade, specifically on a spelling test where I 100% without a shadow of a doubt know that I spelt milk correctly. MILK, milk. And I had it marked wrong on a test. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure, like, I know that I spelt it correctly. And so I had to retake the test and I cheated the second time to make sure that I spelt milk correctly. And that was the very first moment that I cheated. And my wife was talking about, well, homeschooling, there shouldn't be any cheating because you're not comparing yourself to any standard.
Yeah.
You just learn. And so you're removing this judgment from this world and you're allowing the innocence of your child to blossom.
Well, why was it marked wrong on the first one?
Oh man, I don't.
Or
Maybe
we'd have to find your teacher and
right.
ask them.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe my L looked like an I, or my I looked like an L.
I see what
or,
you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
Whatever it was. I mean, that was impactful. I was 6 years old, 7 years old. And from that on, all of a sudden it's like, okay, in order for me to get what society says I'm supposed to get, I have to go whatever route it is and not be true to myself.
Hmm.
And so
What
therefore,
a weird conclusion to draw as a 6-year-old, you know?
crazy. Yeah. Like here, how many of you listeners out there have a 6-year-old or younger children? Like are the thoughts that went through my head at that age. And so by removing them from public education removes the parameters of judgment and comparison. There's a saying that comparison is a thief of joy.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you want to bring joyful individuals up in this world, then don't compare them to anything.
Yeah.
Let them be. And this is why I'm not for public education, because it robs the innocence of children. The minute that you steal the joy out of someone because they didn't reach a certain benchmark or standard or whatever it is the minute that you put them in a box and you said, nope, this is how you need to be.
Yeah. And dude, like, I go back and forth on that because is it kind of just a byproduct of where our society has arrived at because of how people conduct themselves and how people prioritize things? Or is it darker than that? Is it nefarious? And do they want to just create worker bees that don't question things? And it's like, dude, I don't know anymore.
Well,
You know?
I have an answer for you.
Let's hear it.
It's an and, not an or.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so that's what it is. I believe that it is an and. There is a nefarious, darker theme behind it all. And at the same time, because people want to go along to get along, they're not going to challenge it.
Yeah.
And so, if you look at public education in westward expansion, this idea of like we're moving west and there's one school teacher and it didn't matter what grade you were in, if there was grades. The idea was reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Mm-hmm.
These like foundational skill sets that you need to know in order to bank, run a farm, do whatever, move about in society if you want to interact on a grander scale. Then all of a sudden education shifted. Like physical education was never part of school until World War I and World War II, where they realized that, oh, our American people aren't fit for battle. Well, how do we get them fit for battle? Well, let's bring in physical education into the system to prepare you. And that's why everything is built around, there's different models of PE, but the concept of the old school PE was push-up test, sit-up test, pull-up test, flexibility test, mile test. What does that sound like?
Yeah, Army stuff.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so it was here it is for the public because we are going to pull you at some point and you have to do your duty to the country and whatever. Well, education was lost along the way because now all of a sudden you watered down education to fit the parameters of society of what
to serve the government.
To serve the government. Mm-hmm. And the minute that you're serving the government, you're not serving the people.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to this educational process, what we think is, well, we need to change the standards, or we're not testing properly, or these kids aren't getting it. Well, we all are individuals. We learn different ways. You don't learn the same way as I do. When I was in your jujutsu class, when I stopped after I passed the guard because I didn't know the next step, my learning is analytical. Mm-hmm. I want to know the processes so that I can get to the conclusion, to the end result. And until I know the processes, I don't feel like I've reached a level in which I'm comfortable with. Well, if you take that to education and you apply it to the masses, what is a grade level? What is 12th grade to 10th grade to 8th grade to what is it? It's not, they're just introducing different concepts at different times. Well, why can't I just pass through it? Doogie Howser back in the day?
Yeah.
Yeah. The
doctor at 20 or whatever.
Exactly. How did he get there? Because now if you wanted your child to all of a sudden just like skip grades and move forward, the whole idea of like testing out of classes, where's that gone? Because if education is supposed to be unlimited and it's supposed to be for you, for the people, for the people, then why are we not allowing things to be more fluid and go? And instead of it being special education for the kids who have some challenges in their lives, it's just education. And, you can't hold kids back anymore, by the way.
Oh, really?
It's so hard as a parent to get their child to be held back in school. And it's because it's the babysitting system. Why is school 8 hours a day? Because the 8-hour workday,
Yeah.
9 to 5, this concept. Well, take a step back, simplify your life. Going back to the whole mom that is a single parent and trying to figure out what to do. What do you want? Do you want to be self-reliant, self-sufficient? Do you want to not have to rely on all these other outside factors? And what skill sets do you want to pass on to your children? Because at the end of the day, I want to raise critical thinkers and I want to raise warriors. I'm a father of 3 boys, and I want my boys to know what they stand for and what they believe in, and then be able to be gentle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes back to what we just said.
Yeah.
Like kindness and toughness.
Yeah.
Start instilling that in them right now.
Right. And you want to talk about adversity? F.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's your adversity. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Now, in society, or at least in public education where I work, grades do not mean anything until freshman year.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's true.
So why are we creating habits for these children for so long? Go along to get along, go along to get along. And then all of a sudden, bam, high school comes. Oh, I didn't pass a class. Well, it worked for me all these other years.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's not working now. What changed?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be an anomaly within the public education system.
I am.
Do you catch a lot of hate from people and like?
Well, so here's where I'm standing up a little more because I got into education so early on when I didn't know what I stood for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had this general idea of like, I want freedom, I want liberty, but no one taught me about taxes or about government and how these things work. If we really want to change the world, then you better be raising your children and teaching them that you should be thinking public office.
Mm-hmm.
Think about doing this. And yet it doesn't even ever cross minds anymore. It's like everyone's so focused on the survival of like, let's get through this day, this moment. And yes, that's important. But if you don't have goals, you don't have targets, you don't have something that you're aiming for, then where are you going with your life?
Yeah.
So yeah, I am an anomaly within public education, but yet I wasn't always outspoken like I am now.
Yeah.
And it's also gotten to a place where there is strength in numbers, right?
For sure.
And so being the only teacher that thinks this specific way within a community is very tough, is very challenging, is very isolating. And, I'm a natural teacher, yet I don't want to teach anymore.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to teach in the public education sector. I would love to teach everyone about how to hunt and run leadership courses and do this. And it's like, okay, well, then why are you not? It's like, okay. And this is where the accountability comes into place.
Well, but here's the reality too, is that when you shift your sights onto something new, there's a journey to get there.
Yes.
And it's not just like, and I've talked about this a lot on the show, because if you're a young man and you're aspiring to be a millionaire, you're not going to just go to college and then become a CEO.
Right.
You're going to show up and you're going to be the janitor, or you're going to be an intern and not making any money. It's like there's a journey to get to where you want to be. So even as a 37-year-old man now, you're saying, I would love to do this. Okay. Well, that's your new vision.
Yeah.
Your sights are now focused on a new goal. Now there's a path to get there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, okay, well, I guess I could just do this, right? Like you have to set that goal, and then there's a path to arrive there.
Yeah.
And it's cool, right?
Yep.
And maybe that path will be something that is done wholeheartedly through your actions, or maybe that path is something that the universe will kind of deliver. Because I mean, it's like we talked about on your show. They're literally talking about firing all public educators that don't take a vaccination, right?
Which is me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you're like, and this is why I'm so proud. Like you told me you were proud of me, and that's why I'm gonna tell you I'm proud of you, because regardless of where you stand on the vaccination, if you think it's good, if you think it's bad, and there is data from fucking people that are 1,000 times smarter than both of us that can provide research supporting both sides of the fence, right?
Yep.
So I don't care where you stand on it, but what I do care about is that you give people free choice and you allow people to draw their own conclusions, and then you allow people to move forward with what makes sense for their body and their children's bodies.
Yeah.
And so you said, hey, I have come to the conclusion that I'm not comfortable with it. And because of that, you want to fire me? Go ahead.
Yes.
And you're not afraid to say that.
No.
And so many people are afraid to say that. I have so many buddies that are cops, firefighters, educators, because Washington and Oregon, they're out of control right now.
Yes.
The governors are drunk on their power.
Mm-hmm.
And they're literally telling people, I mean, this is a bullying tactic. This isn't about your health. This is about letting you know, I'm in charge, motherfucker.
Yeah.
You're going to do what I tell you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take away your livelihoods if you don't get this shot of medicine.
So,
and in men like us, then do it. You know what I mean? Like, show me you're going to ruin my life.
let's play chicken. Let's call each other on the carpet. Here we go. Whoever's going to make the first move. So this is something is really good for people to hear, for whether you hunt or you don't hunt. Within, and I'm going to pull from two experiences. One is hunting, one is running. And I'm sure you're going to be able to say this for jujitsu as well. In hunting, they always say, hunt your hunt. Don't hunt somebody else's hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Don't emulate how someone else does it, because no one's walking your shoes. When I run a race, run my race. I don't run it against other people. They're there. They're a part of it, but they're not me.
Yeah.
And so, like jujitsu, don't fight someone else's fight. Fight your fight.
Yeah.
And so here it is this idea that this is the public education system. This is how the indoctrination happens. And if anyone's ever wondered, like, how is public education indoctrination? It's social engineering because of the way it teaches you to think. So here we are as students, that if we run our race, hunt our hunt, fight our fight, and it's not at the same pace, level, speed, anything as anyone else, you're shamed, you're guilted, you're judged. Maybe you're faster, slower, whatever. At the end of the day, I pull from the Bible a lot. It says, run the race to win. You don't run the race to win by looking at other people.
Mm-hmm.
You run it by looking at yourself and what you're doing. And if you're realizing that you're about to step in a hole and fall down or bust your ankle or whatever, and that's a metaphor for life, then adjust your step, move, counter move, and live the life and educate yourself the way you want to be educated. One of the biggest things I can't stand about public education is I came out of public school, never wanted to go to school again, and hated to read. Well, what is one?
You and I both.
What is one of the biggest, most impactful things in history is book burning.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Why do they want to burn the books? Because they want to burn the knowledge and the ability for people to gain knowledge on their own. Well, the minute that we come out of education hating to read is the minute that we're no longer thirsty for knowledge and we're willing to rest on our laurels or allow others to provide for us rather than us providing for ourselves.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting, man. Because I don't know. I think I might still hate reading.
Yeah.
Except every once in a while, a certain book just captivates the shit out of me.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm watching a good movie and I don't want to put it down.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? I guess that tells you I don't hate to read.
You don't hate to read. You just hate to be forced to read something you don't want to read.
You know? And I mean, I went to college and dude, I graduated college with a 3.8 and I read none of the books. Zero.
Yeah.
Because, dude, I would read it and then I would I'm looking at words, but I'm not retaining knowledge.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's a problem with my brain, but it's funny because a lot of guys in special operations community will tell me the exact same thing, right? And I look at words and I'm going through the motions of reading, but I'm not learning. And I've always wondered, is there a problem with me? But then other books, like some of those books on the shelf, like some of the books about the special forces invasion of Afghanistan and stuff, I could almost tell you the whole story verbatim just from reading it. So it's like, okay, no, I do retain knowledge when it's something that engages me.
Correct.
You know? But the other side of it is like, could we develop an educational system where people get to learn about material that engages them?
Yeah, it's called homeschooling.
Yeah.
I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Because when you know, not to knock private school, but if you just repackage public school and then pay for it in the private school and maybe get a little religious aspect sprinkled in or whatever, it's like, well, what is really different about it?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the minute that you know what you want is the minute that you know what you thirst for, and you thirst for knowledge in that aspect. We're not all go to the tribal mentality. We're not all meant to be the chiefs. There are the hunters, there are the gatherers, there are the basket weavers, there are the people that, there's
the warriors.
Yeah, there's the roles within the society. And this is why the concept of every kid needing to go to college, it sounds like a waste of money to me, and it sounds like a way for government to get more money and for society to get into debt to the government.
Bro, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And not only is it a way for everybody to be indebted and just become slaves to a paycheck, but even the culture of why we go to college now, and it's, dude, a family friend, his son is going to college next week, or no, today. He's flying today down to Arizona. And he keeps telling everyone, I'm going to Arizona because all the girls. I'm going to Arizona with all the girls. He keeps saying that. And it's like, I'm going to let you in on a little secret right now as a 40-year-old man. There are girls everywhere. You want to meet girls? You can meet girls. And so to that.
So that has nothing to do with
that's
education.
What I'm saying. For that to be one of the motivating factors.
Social experiment.
For going and spending tremendous amounts of money.
Yeah.
And it's tremendous amounts of time and energy for girls. Bro, it's your 18-year-old brain thinking about one thing that all of our brains are thinking about from 18. Well, I'm 40, and it's still one of the only things I think about.
Right. When I was at Jujutsu the other night, I was like, man, I can't wait to get my wife in this, and then we can roll around on the bed.
Like that's just part of the male psychology, right? But the older you get, the more you realize is like, okay, that's an aspect of life that I focus on when I need to.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to dictate everything. And so we got kids that want to spend all their parents' money and go to the other side of the country so they can party and meet girls. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing? And then, like my wife's student loans, because she went to ASU for a couple of years and then she graduated UW, spent the last couple of years at UW. And we didn't get those fucking things paid off until like a year ago.
You're carrying this weight on your shoulders for so long for what?
And then she is a stay-at-home mom, right?
Yeah.
And when I say that, I don't say that disparagingly at all, because I actually think that's one of the most admirable positions on planet Earth. Dude, stay home and raise your family. That's a good role for a person to do.
Yep.
But we've almost arrived at a point when we say stay-at-home mom, there's almost like a negative connotation of that. You don't have a career?
That's because people use the word just before it. I'm just a stay-at-home mom.
But it's funny that she still feels to a certain extent like there's a part of her that is bothered by that, because she's like, you've always been the breadwinner. You've always been the person that provides for us financially. I'm just the stay-at-home mom. And it's like, for a family to flourish and succeed and thrive, you better have a parent with them.
Yep.
You know? And here's the other thing. Do you want to go to work 40 hours a week? So 30 of those hours can be to paying daycares.
Well,
you know what I mean? It's like,
okay, so we always put our money where we invest our time and our money where our heart is. And this is not a judgment on listeners at all. And it goes to the whole stay-at-home mom thing. My wife is a nurse.
Unless they're being a fucktard, then I'll judge you. Sorry, that's just me. That's not Johnny.
Sorry, I roll a little differently, but I do appreciate that. That's why there's strength in numbers. I stand with them. So my wife with the vaccine mandate, Well, she's never going to be a nurse in the state of Washington ever again. And so
Mhm.
she's going through this grieving process of like, I went to college to become a nurse and now it's being taken away from me because I don't want to get this vaccine. And yet, why where everyone's so extrinsically like focused of like, I want to help people as a nurse. Okay. Help our children
Mhm.
because we know our own values and those values will be instilled in them versus do you really know your daycare provider's values? Do you really know your public education teacher's values? Because if we are the majority of we are the average of the majority of the people we surround ourselves with, well, who are you surrounding yourself with? Who are your kids being surrounded by?
And that's a crazy thought to think that we're kind of like outsourcing this extreme responsibility
Yes.
of really guiding our children to people that we don't even know.
Don't know at all.
And we when we pulled my oldest daughter, the school actually just called my wife a couple days ago. They said, "Hey, we see that you disenrolled Siler from Lake Stevens Public Education. We would like to know why." And my wife said the lady that called her was a sweetheart, and they had a really good conversation, right? And she goes, "Well," and she explained some of the things that we're not happy with, and the mask is one of them, right? She goes, "But the last straw for us was when she came home and was told me, her dad, that her science teacher says she should go vegan because if you go vegan, that's going to help greenhouse gas emission."
We never should on people.
Yeah, right?
You
No.
should go vegan.
Yeah. And so then I asked her, like, you already know the first question I asked my daughter. I said, "So this lady's telling you what to eat. What does her physique look like?"
She's fat, overweight.
My daughter goes, "She's really overweight."
Yep.
And I said, "Okay. Do we take nutritional advice from really fat, overweight, incapable people? Does that make any sense to you?"
Doesn't make sense.
And so my wife told the school that. She's like, because I'm someone that is very grounded in capabilities and fitness. Again, kindness and toughness. Like mind, body, and spirit are not separate things. They're all intertwined. And for one to be operating at an optimal level, the others have to be functioning at a high level too.
Mm-hmm.
Your body has to work. And that's an important thing that I continuously teach my children. And two of them are getting that through jujitsu, and it's great to see. But for some lady that couldn't even probably last 20 minutes of my 3-day weekend of hell,
Yeah.
telling my daughter what food she should be putting in her mouth, it's like,
It's hypocritical.
I got to get her out of here.
Yeah.
I got to get her out of here.
Yeah.
And my daughter was actually upset about it because she, you're 12 and you got your friends and this is your norm. She didn't want to get pulled. And I was kind of in turmoil because I was like, I know the right thing, but I hate that I'm making her feel like that I'm kind of putting her in a tough spot. You got to start over. You got to make new friends. And it was actually my wife that's like, this is not a decision. This is what has to happen. And I was like, I agree with you.
Well, and so a lot of people are fearful and judgmental of homeschool parents and homeschool kids. They're like, oh, well, they're not socialized properly, and they're going to be socially awkward.
Well, and that's a true thing if you don't socialize them.
Yeah, but there's
right?
other ways to socialize,
Yeah.
right? Like my two little boys are going to be taking jujitsu classes from you.
Nice.
And then I'm going to be also. And then I want my wife, and she says she's interested in doing it sometime. And here we are.
Well, Rachel Anderson, who's an avid listener of the show.
Yeah.
She's like our female team captain. She rallies the girls, right? So I'm putting this on you. Make her feel welcome and welcome her to the team with open arms and get her on the electric girls team.
Yes. And so here's the thing is like the socialization. Well, okay, where's your community?
Yeah, exactly.
Who are you surrounding yourselves with? Because the minute that here's my wife, she didn't understand this journey that I went into for hunting, because hunting is a lifestyle. It's not a hobby. For me, it is, I had to drop a lot of my other hobbies to take up hunting because it's so time consuming and I wanted to be good at it. I want to be a great hunter. Well, in order to be a great hunter or great anything, it takes time. And so here I was with small little boys. Here, I've only been hunting, I said 7 years. Well, I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
So to them, hunting has been part of their whole life.
Yes. And that meant my wife having to parent without me
Yeah.
at certain times. And so there's a little, resentment, but this is where your communication comes into play. Well, what hunting has provided me is this community. And now I have 2 or 3 other friends and their no, 3 other friends and families that are all homeschooling their children.
Yeah.
And now there's a group of mothers that can support each other and socialize the kids together.
See, that's so awesome.
And if you build it, they will come. And here it is. Like, you start going on this journey and things. The universe is conspiring for us, not against us. We are meant to thrive. We're not just meant to survive.
No, I like that you brought that up and kind of unpack that, because that is a real concern, right? When people are like, well, what about the social aspects? Because I did learn to talk to girls. I did learn to make friends all through like all the people that you interact with in public school, right? And that was a powerful tool for me as a young man, learning to become extremely social. And even as a young man, I was like, dude, I would go skate behind the grocery store with the skaters. And then I'd go to the weight room and lift weights with the football players after they were done with practice. And then I could go hang out with the stoners and like, dude, these guys are cool too. And I would bounce around all the different groups.
And that's why you're so well-rounded.
And I enjoyed the communities of all these different people.
Yep.
And I gathered that.
It's perspectives.
I gathered that as part of a byproduct of the public school system, right? But in order to, I also think that there's a downward trajectory that we're on. So at some point you have to say like, all right, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? And if I'm having my children invest all this time in the public school system just so they can be social, is that the silver lining that they get out of it? Because let's create that social aspect of life in the gym.
Yeah. Well, so a counter argument to what you just said is like, you went to these different areas and you could interact with all of them. Would you say that you as a child were on a good path? Like, were you making good decisions? Were you, and this is not, I guess. It
depends on what years.
Careful. Okay.
15 and 16, I was a fucktard. to use a word that won't come out of your mouth.
So here, I dropped an F-bomb on this podcast already. So here's a perspective. As a teacher, I love when I have students that will engage with me as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
As a teacher, that makes my job fun. I truly enjoy it.
What do you mean by that? Like the actual way they just have conversation with you and speak to you?
Yeah, that they can talk to an adult. And here we are worrying about like socialization of kids to kids. Well, if you know how to talk to an adult, then that means you're not afraid to speak your voice. That means you're not afraid of authority.
Yeah.
It means you are courageous and you're willing to step out of the norm. And so all of a sudden we went to virtual learning, and I had about 1 to 2 kids have their camera on the entire school year in each class.
That's disgusting.
And so they're like, how can I connect with you?
Yeah.
And yet,
for the 2 that did, it's not a real connection. And it's still quite a big step down from face to face. And that's why I like to podcast face to face. It's a different thing.
Well, and then just adding on to that, because the story, it's not over, is like, one of those kids that still had that camera on all year long, which was a kid who I got to have connection with, committed suicide this summer.
Man, how old was he?
8th grader going into 9th grade, so 14 years old.
Dude, did you ever hear of a 14-year-old committing suicide when we were 14?
No, I heard of him getting murdered, but I didn't hear of him committing suicide.
I mean, if people are unwilling to look at what is happening to our fucking youth as a result of this pandemic, then they're being unreasonable. Like, the likelihood of them getting sick is almost non-existent, yet we want them to fucking cover their face, put this fucking unknown medicine in their arm, and stare at people through a fucking computer screen.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be shocked to hear that they're getting extremely depressed and having fucking mental problems.
Yeah. Sad, man.
It's so sad, but it's the reason that it's even more sad is because it's crystal clear what the fuck is going on
Yeah.
and what we're causing. But nobody in any position of government power will speak up and say the truth,
Right.
even though we all know it. You
Right.
know, like I actually read a study, and it's just like I said 20 minutes ago. We can find data to support whatever side, right? But this was a study out of Israel, and it was conducted over the last year. And Israel is like a very high percentage vaccination country, right?
Yeah.
And they've determined that the risk of death for children and the age range, I want to say it was like 0 to 12 or something. It's pretty young children, right?
Uh-huh.
Of having a severe reaction or death from COVID is 2 in 1 million.
Mm.
Okay. So those are pretty fucking, those are outliers, right? Yeah. The chances of adverse reaction or death from the vaccine is 60 in 1 million. So according to that study, it is 30 times more dangerous to get vaccinated as a child than it is to allow your natural immunity to fight this disease. But those numbers and those tests and those results, like if you post that on Instagram, it gets deleted. Or it gets a little flag under it. It's like, oh, harmful information. And it's like, again, and that starts pulling you down these rabbit holes. It's like they're purposely withholding information from people. So they think that the one side of the argument is correct.
This gets me so pissed, and it makes me really emotional right here to even think like, so this is conspiracy talk. I don't have data to back this up. But I do know that I've seen and read stuff in certain areas. When I became a parent for the very first time and I learned about SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
I was scared to death because I was like, my child can just die at any random moment in their sleep. It didn't make sense to me. It wasn't logical. Like there's a disconnect there. And I started going down this world of vaccines, and a lot of this concept of sudden infant death syndrome is vaccine related. And I'm like, yeah, because what else would just randomly kill a kid in the middle of the night that's 4 months old or
Mm-hmm.
3 months old? But yet, how many vaccines do these babies get at birth, at the first day, the first week? And I was like, so anyone who's ever experienced that, I'm sorry. And I don't, like I said, I speak from a place of maybe what's called conspiracy, but yet we're not, we're natural survivors. The human body naturally survives. Like you put a kid in a dumpster and there's reports that they survive and they go through a lot of traumatic stuff and still come out the other side. So the concept that these babies are born and then just randomly die like that, doesn't really make sense. It's not logical to me. So, and I know that you don't necessarily dive into the whole conspiracy world, but
I dive into everything, dude.
It saddens me as a human being, whether I'm a parent or I'm not, but I have that experience. It's like the birth alone was so traumatic that the minute that I even think about losing my child, devastating.
Mm-hmm.
And yet take that and apply it to losing your child mentally, emotionally, socially. My wife, over this last year of our kids staying home because of the pandemic and the ages in which they are, she was like, wow, I didn't even know our kids. Our kids are incredible.
Isn't that crazy?
How many other parents out there are like, I don't actually know my children.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they are supposed to be the greatest legacy that we give to the world.
Yeah, man. No, the whole vaccination thing is weird because, and I say this all the time on my show, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a virologist, right? But I have a lot of street smarts. I have a lot of common sense. I have a good ability to interact with people. I have a good ability to look at someone and hear the words that are coming out of their mouth and know if they're full of shit or not.
Yeah.
And know if they're for me or if they're against me. And I developed a lot of sixth senses overseas in combat too. Like my team, we would know when we were going to get attacked, to the point where we'd put it out over the radio and be like, dude, we got that feeling in the air. Something's about to hit the fan. And then a fucking IED would go off and people start shooting at us with machine guns. So if you use your sixth sense and you look at the way that the world is conducting this vaccination, this mass vaccination, you know that it's dirty.
Mm-hmm.
You know that it's dirty. And the reason you know that it's dirty is because they're pushing it on our children. When our children, it's COVID being dangerous to our children is statistically insignificant.
Right.
Here's the other things. Once you're vaccinated, and this is another study, if you want to go look it up, the viral load in the lungs is said to be decreased. So it has the potential to save you as the individual that took the vaccine. But if you're vaccinated and you catch COVID, the viral load throughout your nasal cavity is the same as an unvaccinated person. Therefore, receiving and transmitting the virus from person to person, your vaccinated status is a moot point, right?
Right.
So we're seeing these things that we know, okay, you're trying to force it in our kids, but it's statistically insignificant for them. It's also not going to prevent the spread of it. So why are you doing this to us?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the underlying issue? And is the underlying issue just to make Pfizer billions of dollars with a B? Is that what it is? Is this just all money driven? Or is it darker than that? And I think there's validity. And just like you said, it's not an and or an or. Maybe it's both, right? Let's get rich. Let's get control of people. Let's make people live in fear. And if it is a eugenics thing too, where eventually like
eugenics,
they're going to kill people with this. Like this is the point that I've arrived at. And dude, I'm a 40-year-old man. I've been reasonable my entire adult life. I don't take any theories off the table now.
No, you can't.
Because our government is clearly dirty.
In the Bible, it talks about the root of all evil is the love of money.
Mm-hmm.
Not that money's the root of all evil. It's the love of money. And so that's why everyone says, well, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, because where the money is, there goes your heart as well.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you're pushing. If it was inherently good, you know, in the Bible, it also talks about a fruit is known by the tree, and the tree is known by the fruit it bears. If it bears good fruit or it bears not good fruit. And so you don't have to force anyone to do something, because the good fruit is naturally going to show itself, and then people are naturally going to want to be drawn towards it.
People are drawn towards good. People are drawn towards things that make sense.
Yeah.
So you have to incentivize with money and pizza and marijuana
and unhealthy
lotteries.
Yeah.
Right. And I made a video last night about how my gym will remain open to my death, if that's where they want to take it. Because I believe that people's mental health and their physical health that they gain through exercise and camaraderie and community and CrossFit and Jujutsu, it trumps Governor Inslee's mandates.
Right.
And so I'm willing to put that out there, and I'm willing to fucking die for it. Right. But if you have to convince people that this is the right way through all these weird incentives, and the most bizarre thing about it is all these weird incentives are actually part of an unhealthy lifestyle. So what are we talking about here? Because again, the data shows, I think it's 78 to 80% of the people that have died of COVID had comorbidities. Most of those being heart disease and diabetes. We know what kills you. It's not COVID. Right. It's the fact that you don't run and you eat bullshit all day. Well, but nobody talks about this.
So if society stopped, and my mom, bless her heart, she always said, say no to the good so you can say yes to the best. It's slow to speak, you know, and just take it all in for a second. Because if you truly take the time and to go inside yourself, we have a knower. We have our natural inner spirit that knows what is good or what is bad. This
That's
is
right.
like
That is
whether
right.
humans are intrinsically good or intrinsically evil. Well, we know, I believe that we're intrinsically good. So we know what's good. The society, the buzz of society, the vaccines, the whatever conspiracy you want to throw out there, whether it's like um, the stuff they put in the water or whatever it is,
Hmm.
there's a lot of talk in the spiritual space about it calcifying your pineal gland
Yeah.
and your third eye
And
and where
Hitler did that.
yes. And so what that does is it disconnects human beings, the body, to their spirit and to their soul and to what they truly know.
Hmm.
And so if they do not take the chance to get clear with themselves and ground themselves and get in alignment with themselves, then you're quickly going any directions. Because if you were to say to a reasonable human, here's a virus, here's a vaccine, or here is healthy lifestyle, and you're in control of who you interact with, what do you think's a healthier
Well,
or like a more true way of being?
we all know, and even the people that have taken the vaccine, they know as well that the more pure and the more true path is to build resilience in yourself, in your community, in your family, and to make your body healthy and capable. But it goes back to what we said an hour ago. That's the hard choice.
Yeah.
The easy choice is I'm going to drive. You don't even have to get out of your car. There's drive-through vaccinations. You drive up, you roll your window down, boom. I'm good now. And then they're going to go sit their fat ass on the couch and eat their Papa John's pizza, just like I want to do. Like, make no mistake, right?
Yeah.
But they're not going to arrive at that place where it's like, okay, I may want to do this, but it's not what I should do or what I need to do.
Right.
Right. And so these people are simply looking at the vaccination as the easy choice.
So I always love to use the terminology back on them, right? And so in the education system, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People is a huge push within the education system. And one of the 7 habits is begin with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. That's a weird concept. Begin with the end in mind, meaning don't start until you know where the end result is going to lead.
Bro, the military talks about that all the time. And then you do what's called backwards planning.
Yeah, reverse engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so simple, and yet people don't take the time because we're busy. We're a busy society. Oh, I'm too busy for that. And it's going back to the whole I'm too busy to come to the gym, or I'm too busy to train, or I'm too busy, I'm too busy. And this continuation of I can't catch my breath because I got to go here, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got stop.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want out of life?
I like the fact that because backwards planning is utilized for basically operational purposes. Like, hey, we want to be time on target, kicking this door down at 2,300 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's start looking back. How long is the helicopter flight? How long is it going to take from our LZ to conduct a movement to this residence? And you start doing all these different things. So okay, at this time, the day before, we need to have all our gear on the airfield ready to load up and get on the bird.
Yeah.
But you can backwards plan for your life.
So that's not taught in the education system. Reverse engineering and backwards planning isn't taught. So Sean Wallen, I believe Wallen's last name, Lions Not Sheep guy.
I met him a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a post that he made on Facebook where he had his Ferrari or some like really nice car. And he's like, any of you can get this if you want. You got to understand how much it costs. And then how do you then... The how takes care of itself. Is before you go to the how, you have to know what you want. And if you don't know what you want, then you don't know the how. So he knew that he wanted a really expensive car. And so reverse engineering, okay, well, it's going to take me $10 a week to set aside. And then if I do $10 a week, and then it just keeps growing, it keeps growing. So you don't like have to put this time frame on yourself, but if that's what you want, then work towards it.
Mhm.
Take the time to identify what you want as a human being. It's your life. No one else is going to live your life. No one else is going to come save you. Be the hero in your own life. Get what you want. What are we waiting for as a society? It drives me nuts. Here we are with, students in my class that won't even turn their cameras on or won't turn in assignments. Like, you know how easy it is to pass public education? Show up and turn in assignments. You don't even have to do them well. You just have to turn them in and go through this process, because processes lead to something.
It's like, I was actually thinking about this very thing yesterday in my sauna, and it's like, I feel like the solution to this problem is not overwhelmingly difficult. And it's not a concept that is abstract or hard to grasp, but it just takes commitment. And it takes the ability to say, just like you said, this is what I want. So now it's time to go get it.
Yeah.
But I honestly think the majority of people living in this world will never arrive at that conclusion, because you and I can sit here and talk about it, and then I can post this to my production company and it gets released next week and 40,000 people are going to listen to it. But the thing is, the 40,000 people that are listening to podcasts like
probably
this
the people that are already living
are probably already on a path of, hey, I want to get better. I want to get stronger. I want to get fitter. I want to have a better relationship with my wife. I want to, because they already have some of their sights set.
Right.
That's why they're reading certain books. That's why they're listening to certain podcasts. That's why I listen to certain podcasts. But for all the other people that are not willing to set their sights on something, I don't know. We can scream from the mountaintops the things. And again, I'm not an expert in anything.
Yeah.
But there are some things that I've done, some things that I've implemented that have worked well for me throughout my life. And I like to share those things. And the flip side of that is I like to listen to Mike Glover and Andy Stump and Joe Rogan and hear about what worked for their life.
Right.
And now maybe I can draw from some of their experiences. And like, it's circular. It's not me speaking to other people or other people speaking to me. We're all sharing, right? Once you're inside of that circle, you start to grow and you realize it. But there's a lot of people that'll never step inside of that. And like Mitch Aguiar, who was on last week's podcast, he called me last night and he was kind of bummed out. He's like, man, I'm doing a 13-day fast tomorrow. And so I went to Wawa, which I don't even know what Wawa is, and to get a milkshake. He goes, that's all I wanted. He goes, I know milkshake's bullshit. It's not good for me, but I'm not eating food for 13 days. So I want to end with a bang, right? He said he went to 2 different places that are milkshake places, and both of them said, we're kind of understaffed right now. We're not really, we're not in a position to make milkshakes. And he goes like, you're a milkshake place. Yeah, but we're kind of understaffed. So we're just not making milkshakes today. And so he said it was like irritating, right? But again, not the end of the world. He just didn't get a milkshake. He said what was more disheartening is every person in both of the 2 places he went was like morbidly obese, staring at their phones, just looking and feeling their energy was just shit. And he's like, dude, a whole restaurant full of people, and they all looked like just fat, unmotivated fucking people that are ready to accept being failures. What do you do with all those people? Now, I love the stories of people that did find themselves in that lifestyle as a result of bad choices, and then made, just like you said, set your sights on something, and then they change the trajectory, right? And I love that I get to use this podcast to sometimes motivate some people that were on a bad path. And I get emails all the time. It's like, dude, I started listening to your podcast. I started Jujutsu. Yes.
Yeah.
We help someone set their sights. But at the end of the day, the people that listen to the show and set their sights on something, they're already looking for an avenue to set a new goal or set those sights.
Yeah.
And for all the people that aren't, it's like, man.
Sad. It's a sad existence. So Mitch, if you're listening to this podcast, life happens for you. It doesn't happen to you. So just take that and you can chew on that for your fast, because you know that milkshake wasn't healthy for you. You knew it in your own soul, at your very being, but yet you gave into it. Now, it's not a judgment. But know that life, and this goes for all listeners, life happens for you. It does not happen to you. We are not victims in our lives. This is where I say the universe is conspiring for us. I don't go about my life being like, woe is me, like the Eeyore mentality.
Yeah.
No, the state, the governor made a mandate for all educators and nurses to take a jab or get fired. Okay. Life happens for me, not to me. I'm not crying and being like, oh, he's doing this to me. No, it's an opportunity for me to shift, for me to sidestep, for me to then get better trajectory onto my target that I want. And this is one of the takeaways, the two major takeaways for you listeners listening to this. Number one, you have to identify what you want. Number two, life happens for you. It doesn't happen to you. Stop playing the victim and be your own hero.
Man, I love that, because if I've learned anything over the last 2 years, it's that by standing up for what I believe and putting myself out there and drawing hard lines, my life has grown
Yes.
in a manner that I never thought imaginable, both with relationships with people, financially, like my family. My trajectory has been on a better path for simply standing up for what I believe to be true. And that's what I tell all these people that are firefighters, police officers, educators. They're being controlled by fear. And they're like, well, if I do this, then if I don't do this, then I'm going to lose my job and this and that. And I've even had some people say like, well, Greg, I'm not as charismatic as you. I couldn't just go start a podcast. And it's like, I'm not saying go start a podcast. I'm saying follow your heart.
Right. Well,
And something good will come out of it.
So many people draw their identity in life off of what they do.
Yeah.
And that goes like to that contract that I have with myself. I'm a loving, powerful, inspiring leader. Well, that's who I am. That's my identity. I can rest upon that when I'm unsure about anything. And yet, for the longest time when I played college football, I was like, well, I'm Johnny Mack, quarterback from Kamiak. Like that was my identity. And then the minute that football came to an end, because it comes to an end at some point, I'm not in the NFL. And even at that point, it still comes to an end. Then who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you, Greg Anderson, when you're alone in your bed at night or alone in the shower? The thoughts that go through your head is like these people draw their identity. It's like, oh, I'm a school teacher. I'm this. I'm that. I'm this. You're none of that. That's just what you are choosing to do.
Yes.
And that is not who you are. So that's why, what do you stand for? What do you believe? What are your core values? Because the minute that you know what you are is the minute that the adversity comes and a governor makes a mandate that says take the jab or get fired. You already know where the decision's easy for you. It's just now walk through it.
Yeah.
You don't have to quit. You don't have, unless you want to. And that's once again going back to what you want. Walk through it.
Yeah.
See what's coming. Life is beautiful. It's happening for you. It's not happening to you. And this is the mindset shift that is not being taught in public education, that is not being taught to the younger generation, that is not being taught in business environments like First Form with Andy Frisella talking about this leadership library where it's like, have at it.
Yeah.
It is yours. The world is yours. Take what you need. You don't need to take more than you need or whatever. And yet we're like, well, I'm an engineer. I push a button. I'm a garbage man. I'm this, I'm that. And where did that come from? Public education.
Yeah.
Society norms. It's time to break free,
No.
break out. And that's called freedom. And that's
Man.
truly living.
I love it. All right. Well, we're at 2 hours and 42 minutes. And I can already tell you, we're going to have a follow-up episode or two, especially because we're basically almost neighbors.
That, and we didn't even really talk about hunting a whole lot.
Well, dude, let's talk about hunting next time then.
Yeah.
As usual, for when my guests come on the show, I like to give you some of our sponsors. So those are the Paleo Valley grass-fed beef sticks. Take those home.
Excellent.
Also, here's a sample of all the elements, okay? And elements is, you were talking about pickle juice and pickles for running.
Yep.
Those are rehydration packets.
Perfect.
Which is a lot of the electrolytes, but not like dyes and sugars and all the bullshit. And then I always ask, because another one of our sponsors is Cured, who you've been drinking coffee out of their cup, but they're a CBD company.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so there's some CBD. I know you're an athlete and you're a runner, so that's the run-on salve that you put on muscles. That's
Perfect.
this one here.
Yes,
And then that one's just the oral CBD as well. Stuff's awesome.
So often people use things as crutches in life,
Mhm.
and I had a habit of like taking ibuprofen.
It's bad for you, man.
And so, like before I'd go on a long run, I'd load up with 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, and so you don't need it. Things aren't needed in certain aspects of life, but I did notice that I put CBD on topical on my quads, hamstrings, and calves before I went and ran. Felt great.
Well, bro, I mean, we have a synergistic relationships with the plants and animals on this planet. There's cannabinoid receptors in our bodies.
Yep.
That the only thing that can connect to those is this plant.
Right.
So, I mean, that tells me right there, there's something to this. And just like you said, you try it and it feels right. That's not a crutch. That's not you cheating. It's just like if you eat a healthy meal, you feel better afterwards, right?
Right.
And so I think it's important, like all that stuff right there. And it's cool having sponsors, because I turn down sponsors that I don't think are congruent with my lifestyle. And that's why it's like, it's cool to have sponsors that do help with your performance or your recovery.
Freaking awesome.
And it's what it's about, dude.
Dude.
So
and you can't outgive good. Thank you, brother. I really
so I just want to say, I wanted you to end your 2 points. You said, set your sights on something.
You got to know what you want. And then life is happening for you, not to you.
I fucking love it, man. Well, let's just wrap this up with, if people want to follow your podcast or your social media or find more about you, how can they find you? Where are you at?
Yeah. So Instagram, obviously the best platform for that. The Soulful Hunter podcast, all one word. I'm on there. The other platform the other account is Washington Backcountry, and that's Washington_Backcountry.
And that's on Instagram?
And that's all on Instagram.
And what's your personal one?
The real Johnny Mack.
The real Johnny Mack.
Yeah.
Not one of the imposters.
No, the real one. And so I got that. I also have, if you want to know more of my story, you can go to wabackcountry.com or soulfulhunter.com. This is my website, different landing pages, same story. I also have a show on Carbon TV, and it's going to be on YouTube after it gets done launching on Carbon TV. And if you haven't heard of Carbon TV, it's like Netflix. So it's an app you can download on your phone or on Roku, Apple TV, all this stuff. And my show is called Soul Seekers.
Okay.
And
awesome.
So go check that out. It's just my journey, my hunting and teaching others and mentoring, and mentorship is conservation. But the podcast is found wherever podcasts you can listen to. And if they're not, man, shoot me a message and let me know so I can get it on that platform. But yeah, be blessed, everybody. Know that life is happening for you, and be of good cheer. Be of good cheer. Let your light shine and conquer the darkness.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. And that's a perfect place to wrap this up.
I love it.